Welcome to City Hall. We'll get started with our invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a rabbi who's been stuck in traffic, so I'm going to ask Councilman Brian Walters to lead us in the invocation. Afterwards, I'll ask Councilwoman Meg Sawyer to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would everyone please stand?
Please bow your heads. Father God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to come here this morning and conduct the people's business. Father, I just ask that you will give us wisdom beyond our own understanding. Father, that we will glorify you in all that we do. Father, and that we will treat the people before us, Father, with honor and dignity. Thank you for the privilege of serving the citizens of Oklahoma City, and I pray that you'll continue to bless this city. In your name I pray, amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. MT, Diana, you all want to come up? We have a city employee today whom we're going to honor for his first 40 years of service for the city of Oklahoma City. MT Berry is our former police chief, currently an assistant city manager. Let's show our appreciation to MT and his wife, Diana. Wonderful years of service. He started when he was 12. I asked who the mayor was when he started, and he says, you know, when I was 19, I don't think I knew who the mayor was. MT, congratulations very much. We do have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Whereas on September 1st, 2010, Major T. Berry, most often referred to as MT, celebrated 40 years of employment with the city of Oklahoma City. Whereas MT began his career at the Oklahoma City Police Department in 1970 as a community service officer, after he was hired as a police officer, from which he progressed through the ranks until being named Oklahoma City's 47th Chief of Police on March 3, 1998. And whereas on August 15, 2003, MT was named Assistant City Manager for the City of Oklahoma City. Whereas MT holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice from the University of Central Oklahoma and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy, he is also a graduate of the Senior Management Institute for Police, the National Executive Institute, and the National Emergency Management Institute. Whereas MT is committed to public service not only on a professional level but also from a personal position, as is exemplified in his active service in numerous professional organizations, nonprofit agencies, and community groups, including the International Association of Chiefs of Police, past president of FBI National Academy Associates, the Oklahoma chapter, the American Red Cross, the United Way of Central Oklahoma, Leadership Oklahoma City, and the Boy Scouts of America. Whereas MT is an active member of Mount Olive Baptist Church, where he serves as a deacon and plays the bass guitar for the church choirs, as well as for the Ambassadors Choir, something he has done for 20 years. MT is a loyal and avid Oklahoma City Thunder fan. Whereas MT is married to Diana, his wife of 23 years, and they have 4 children, Major III, Michelle, Marissa, and Tim. MT and Diana have a son-in-law, Derek, who is married to Michelle, and a daughter-in-law, Vanessa, married to Major III. The Berrys have 2 grandchildren, Derek Jr. and Destiny, and another grandson due in January. Whereas we would be remiss in not mentioning the other love of MT's life, his 4.5-year-old dog, Maggie, a Yorkie Poo. Whereas MT personifies service, integrity, dependability, loyalty, honor, and responsibility, values that have made him an effective city leader as he selflessly works to ensure that current and future community needs are met. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Mayor and the Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby recognize and commend Major T. Berry for his 40 years of service to the City of Oklahoma City and its citizens.
Let's see if we can round up a motion. And cast your votes. And it's unanimous. Let's show our appreciation once again.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to say, Mayor, members of council, city manager, I appreciate the recognition this morning, and thank you so much for that. I have enjoyed thoroughly my 40 years with the city. It doesn't seem like it's been quite that long, but whenever you think about it, it has. But I love being a public servant. I've always loved helping people, and I've always loved every job that I've had with the city. And I look forward to doing my second 40 years.
Thank you. Once again, let's show our appreciation.
Mayor, if I could real quick,
Sure.
MT and I have known each other a while. I got to know each other better as we both rose in the ranks of the two departments. One thing that's always helped us get along is we both agreed very early. He never wanted to do what firemen did, and I never wanted to do what police did. So we always had a mutual understanding. But he has served the city well over the years, and congratulations.
Well put. We also want to show our respect and appreciation for our Crime Stoppers group. We have a commendation this morning. I'll ask Sergeant Charlie Phillips to come forward. Let's see, Don, Margaret, Jay, Dan, Sam, everybody, come on up. We have a resolution. I'll ask the clerk to read it as we get settled.
Whereas formed in 1979 through the combined efforts of concerned citizens and the Oklahoma City Police Department, Crime Stoppers of Oklahoma City was the second Crime Stoppers organization created in the nation and has now become the model for others to emulate. Whereas Crime Stoppers is based upon the simple concept of citizens, law enforcement, and media working together to report, publicize, and solve crimes in our community, and Crime Stoppers of Oklahoma City has proved successful. Over 176,000 tips received, over 15,000 crimes solved, including some 7,400 arrests. Recovery of stolen property valued in excess of $18 million and over $16 million of illegal narcotics were seized. Whereas Crime Stoppers of Oklahoma City is a citizen-operated nonprofit organization with all reward and administrative funds raised through charitable contributions from the public. Whereas Sergeant Charlie Phillips has served as the department's Crime Stoppers coordinator since March of 2006, and on average he manages over 300 tips from citizens monthly, which are entered into a database and routed to the appropriate investigative units and their disposition recorded. During Sergeant Phillips' tenure, he and the Crime Stoppers Board have taken the Oklahoma City program to an extraordinary level of performance, and Crime Stoppers of Oklahoma City was nationally recognized at the organization's 2010 National Convention as the single most successful program within the United States. Based on arrests made, cases cleared, and property recovered between July 1st, 2009 and June 30th, 2010. Whereas in 2010, Crime Stoppers of Oklahoma City broke into the top 10 Crime Stoppers organizations in the world. Now therefore be it resolved by the Mayor and Council of the City of Oklahoma City that they do hereby commend and congratulate Sergeant Charlie Phillips and Crime Stoppers of Oklahoma City for exemplary work to provide a safe avenue for callers to furnish crime-related information to law enforcement to help solve crimes and convict criminals.
We have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. All right, let's show our appreciation for Crime Stoppers, Charlie.
Mr. Mayor, City Manager, Council members, thank you very much for this resolution that we really appreciate. I know it means a great deal to our board members. I've got one of our board members, Don Bobzine, that would like to say a couple of words here real quickly, but I do want to say it means a great deal for me to be recognized on the same day as a man that I probably have as much respect for as anybody I've ever had the pleasure of working with, and that's Chief Berry. And so it's a special day even above and beyond this for that fact. So I will let Don Bobzine say a few words here.
Thank you. Broadway Extension caught us today, folks. I'm sorry. It was a log jam. MT, this used to be your job up here too, didn't it? My name's Don Bobzine. I'm President Emeritus of Crime Stoppers, which is another term for oldest guy on the board. I'm sure a lot of this has been covered that I was going to talk about, but the main thing I need to chat with you about very briefly is our program works, of course, by our board is responsible for oversight, management of Charlie and his work, and also fundraising, which these days is a pretty good challenge. But fortunately, we've been able to maintain. Charlie's success adds to our challenge because he does such a great job that our reward program is becoming bigger and bigger now. And so there's good news, bad news. Sometimes people wonder, how come Oklahoma City is so much better than all the others? You know, they may have told you that we're ranked number one. We're not just ranked one. It's double and quadruple the other cities like L.A., Miami. It's just amazing, the difference. When quizzed about the difference in results, Sergeant Phillips modestly admits that instead of just relaying the information to the appropriate detectives, he does a little groundwork. In other words, he prepares this far more than most coordinators do. So once the detectives have it, they are off and running. The program receives no government funding. We're financed totally by corporate and foundation sources. Not only is our program cost-free to the city, which surely has a nice sound to it, cost-free to the city, it's a nice source of income. Many of our solved crimes involve drug dealers, and the seizures that are made during the arrests, the seizures of property, is incredible. Like this year alone, over $1 million. This property will be sold, the money distributed to the various law enforcement agencies. The pure cash that's seized this year alone, $500,000. That also is distributed to the law enforcement agencies. An interesting side note in the manner the way Sergeant Phillips works with the informers is when they provide information that proves to be correct, Sergeant Phillips notifies them they're now eligible for a reward. This would be $200 to $1,000. At this point, he inquires to the informer, "We appreciate your information, and you now qualify for the reward. By the way, did you call for the reward?" And he pauses for effect. "Or because you're a devoted, good citizen." There's usually a short silence followed by, yeah, I want to be a good citizen. In other words, they do not claim the reward. It's free information. And this occurs 50% of the time. So apparently, Charlie took a salesmanship course somewhere along his education, and it saved us an awful lot of money. We appreciate your recognition of the country's best Crime Stopper program, but our board is present today. We're here to make sure that the credit goes where it belongs, right here. I've been on this board for over 30 years and have been honored to work with many very good coordinators. But Charlie Phillips has raised the bar to an unimaginable new level. Oklahoma City Police Department and Oklahoma City are fortunate to have Sergeant Phillips on their team. Oklahoma City Crime Stoppers is the best program in the U.S. because Charlie Phillips is the best coordinator. We admire and appreciate him and hope you do also.
Show our appreciation. Congratulations. Nice words.
Thank you for making such an effort to be down here. Okay, thank you.
We're on item 3C of the council agenda. We'll be putting some council people in the Oklahoma City Development Trust, and we'll be disbanding that trust later in the session. So
Move the item.
one of those days when we create things and then dispose of them for procedural efforts. So we have a motion and a second. Cast your votes. Those appointments are Confirmed. And then we have an appointment for Sharifa Smith for the Oklahoma City Arts Commission. Cast your votes. And she is appointed as well. We're on to item 4. These are the Journal of Council Proceedings. And item A is to receive the Journal of Council Proceedings for October 12th. And item B is to approve the Journal of Council Proceedings for both September 28th and October 5th. Any comments or questions about the journals? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 5 is request for uncontested continuances.
Mayor, just a couple this morning on page 12 under item 8, G1. Item A, 2215 North Billen Avenue. We ask to be stricken. We need to re-notify. Item B, 2612 Dittmer Road. We need to strike that. The owner has secured. Item D, 10900 Spring Hollow Road. We ask that be stricken. The owner has secured. And item G, 703 Northwest 110th Street. We ask that be stricken. We need to re-notify for additional violations.
All right, any other requests for uncontested continuances? Then we'll recess the council meeting, convene as the Oklahoma City Municipal Facilities Authority. There are 4 items. All right, any questions or comments about the MFA? Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. We'll adjourn the OCMFA, convene as the Oklahoma City Public Property Authority. There is 1 item. Yes.
Is there a performance, any kind of a performance guarantee or requirement, or is it just straight bid? We're talking about the golf course, correct? Yes, sir. Is there a performance item attached to the bid that's being sent out?
No.
There's not. Okay.
Comments or questions on the PPA? All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Adjourn OCPPA, reconvene the council meeting with a consent docket. All right, any individual considerations on the consent docket?
Your Honor, I just have a couple of minor questions on J.1 and W.
Okay.
I think I just wanted to mention 6G, if I could, please.
All right, Pat, what are your questions?
Well, on J.1, we're getting a little help for our street maintenance department, and it's to repair deteriorated streets when it is beyond the capacity of the street maintenance division to perform repairs in a timely manner. And I wondered what kind of repairs that we were asking the contractor to do, whether it was additional pothole replacement or beyond that, and if it was beyond that, how would we allocate the money?
It is beyond that. Our street maintenance division addresses all the pothole repairs, and they do some smaller paving repairs. But when it gets beyond their capabilities, we use this contract on an as-needed basis. We have
the capacity it would be defined here as a capability of the street maintenance crews.
Yes.
And how are those projects then determined? Well, if we have more work than we can do with our street maintenance division, how is this $1 million going to be spent then?
It's kind of on a priority basis. We come in and find areas that you just can't go patch the potholes anymore. You might have a quarter of a block that needs to be rotomilled or overlaid or totally pulled up and asphalt replaced, where it's just gotten to the point where you can't handle it with a microsurfacing or pothole patching anymore. It's deteriorated beyond that point. We go into those specific areas as they become apparent.
And those projects would be prioritized on what basis, Jim?
Really,
quality of the streets, traffic. What kind of a criteria do we use to establish priority on those projects?
When we come across something that's just beyond our own repair and it's total base failure, something along those lines.
I would suspect we have several kinds of projects or several projects that would qualify under your definition. How do we decide which ones are going to be done out of this $100 million we've got?
Councilman, if it's something that has got a full lane closed or a street closed or something like that, that will certainly rise to the top of the priority list. If it's something that is a partial lane closure or something that we can work around and get traffic around, it wouldn't be as high a priority as something that's got a road closed.
Okay.
That's really about the only priority ranking that we use.
Okay, thank you. On W, Your Honor, this is a bridge project, and they had some wording in there that I was curious about. The bridge on the above location washed out in the flood of June 14, 2010, was identified as a project that would qualify for FEMA reimbursement. And we have $200,000 to do this project, and there are no funds available. How do we stand in our FEMA reimbursement process? Are we going to be reimbursed? Is it going to be reimbursed the full $200,000 to fix it? Or?
I believe that we'll be, I don't know if we'll get the full reimbursement. I can find that information out for you. I believe it's pretty good certainty that we'll get a partial reimbursement on this particular project.
To the extent that we get reimbursed from FEMA, would that reduce then the amount of money we have to take out of these other projects, other GO bond?
Yes, it would. And let me get some detail on that for you, okay?
So if we approve this morning, then would we take the $200,000 out of these other GO bond allocations and put them towards this bridge project? And if FEMA comes along and, for the sake of discussion, gives us $100,000, what are we going to do with the extra $100,000 that we've taken out of these projects? Will they go into the bridge maintenance pool then?
Yes, this is coming from unlisted funds, so it's not coming from a specific project. So it would, any reimbursement we get would go back into that unlisted pool.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Meg?
Yes, I just wanted to mention item 6G. I think we spoke about this once before. But this is a resolution that approves some matching funds for a federal grant to host a historic preservation trades exposition. This will be in August of 2011, the 19th and 20th. But it's an ongoing way for our planning department and our historic preservation folks to help put homeowners together with tradespeople and education seminars and things to really educate and help us improve and connect with the historic preservation efforts that we're trying to accomplish. And just another very quick mention, item 6S is Southwest 46 and Walker, and on the minutes it indicates that it's in Ward 6, but that's actually Ward 4.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Any other comments about the consent docket? All right, ready to vote? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Nothing on the concurrence docket today, so we move into item 8. These are items that require a separate vote, and we begin with a series of zoning cases, the first of which is in Ward 6. It's an ABC issue. Would be currently, would be an ABC consumption. It's a restaurant with limited alcohol district, and we'd be overlaying an I-1 light industrial district. Meg?
Yeah, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? Great.
Morning.
Good morning. We need your name, please.
Alina Reyes, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Alrighty. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about the project?
Yeah, we're trying to get the ABC overlay because our business has been very slow, so we want to increase our sales.
Okay. And this is simply for the serving of Low Point beer restaurant.
Right.
There were no protests at any of the meetings. I would recommend approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on item 8A1? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 8A2 is a zoning case in Ward 2. It's another ABC issue. The address is 1900 Northwest Expressway. Sam?
Thank you, Mayor. I see the applicant here, Paul Fever. This is the Full Circle Bookstore in 50 Penn Place. Been operating as deli for years and asking for ABC 1. Paul, I don't know if we need to speak. Any protest here today? There were not at Planning Commission. Unless someone has a question of the applicant, I'd move for approval.
Second.
Comments or questions? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8A3 is a zoning case in Ward 4. It's also an ABC issue.
Is there anyone here to protest this? To protest? No, this is established. There has been an establishment at this location for a number of years. I'd move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8A3. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8A4 is a zoning case at 8800 South Santa Fe Avenue. It's currently C3 Community Commercial. It would become an R1ZL single-family residential zero lot line district, and that's in Ward 4. Pete?
Again, I'd ask if there are any protests on this matter. Yeah, this is, I'm going to move approval. This is reasonable for this area. It's a good project.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8A4. Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. On item 8A5, it's a zoning case also in Ward 4. The address is 9600 South Bryant Avenue. It's a PUD, and it would be becoming an R1 single-family residential district.
Again, are there protests? Is the applicant present on this one?
Good morning. We'll need your name and address for the record, please.
Lindsay Settle with Craft & Toll representing the applicant.
Could you just give a little bit of an overview of what's proposed here?
We are proposing to rezone this location from the current PUD zoning that allows mobile homes and residential to just do a straight R1 for a residential development.
Is it something you plan to, the mobile home PUD's been there a long time without any progress on it. Is this something that you plan to do within the next?
Yes, we have plans for phase 1 ready to go now.
Okay. I move approval. Thank you.
All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on item 8A6. It's a zoning case in Ward 3. The address is 11510 West I-40. It's currently a planned unit development, and it would become a new PUD. Larry?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. I see the applicant's representative here, Ken. If you come forward, if you just give the council a brief overview of what has transpired, what is going to transpire, and some of the agreements that you've made.
Sure. Kendall Dillon with Craft & Toll representing the applicant. And just real quickly, a brief overview of what we're trying to do here. Obviously, the intent of this application is to permit a kind of an upper-end RV park. A few highlights about the PUD real quick. Number one, we are asking, it's a single-use PUD, so we're only asking for one use, which is lodging accommodations campground to permit this. We have made, obviously it's along an appearance corridor, so we've agreed to do the 20% increase in landscaping. In addition to that, we've agreed to plant one tree for every 5,000 square feet. We've given an additional 30-foot of landscape buffer along I-40. In regards to signage, we were asking for 2 monument signs, 8 feet tall, no pole signs. So that's some of the highlights of the PUD itself. In regards to the surrounding properties, obviously we're abutted on the north by I-40, to the east by a hotel, to the south by some existing R4 and apartments. And then to the west, we have about 8 single-family residences that you see that back up to it there. However, I will say that we're separated from them by a large preservation area. It's kind of a floodplain through there that have a lot of trees, and so we're keeping all that, preserving it to serve as a buffer between us. I might add that when we originally made this application that we did hear some concerns from those neighbors, so we met with them way back in May to address their concerns. Real briefly, a few of the things and concerns that they had, they were concerned first and foremost about some flooding issues. And hearing that, we've made some different modifications to our site plan, one being that we've added additional detention. And by doing that, we've also decreased the magnitude of our development. We went from 96 campsites down to 61, which is, in turn has also widened that additional common area and buffer between us. They had a concern about what the fence would, the height and the location of the fence along the west, so we've agreed with them to put our fence on the east side of the drainage way or the common area and the preserve area, and we've also agreed to make that an 8-foot fence. They had some questions and concerns about lighting, so we've obviously written into the PUD to provide shield shades and to mitigate that. And then lastly, I think they had a concern about traffic, of which obviously their access is all the way down to Reno and to Check Hall, but they were still a little bit concerned about traffic on Mustang Road. And if you look at traffic on this, what we basically are doing by rezoning it is we are actually reducing, in regards to potential development, traffic, the number of trips, we're reducing it down to about 20% of what the existing zoning would be today. So I think all of those concessions that we've made have, for the most part, satisfied them. I don't know if anybody's here on their behalf, but I think as per our discussions, we've pretty much taken care of most of their issues. That's kind of it in a nutshell. The other couple things that have arisen since the Planning Commission, There's been a little bit of a concern about length of stay, so we are willing today to agree to the fact that we would have a maximum of 90-day continuous stay. And then there was also a question about some recreational amenities, and we will agree that there will be a pool associated with the clubhouse and for recreational purposes. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Kendall. Is Bob Teener in? These additional ones, the 90-day stay and the pool, they can be incorporated into the PUD?
Yes, you need to make that part of your motion, and we'll get a document, amended document.
Okay. And Kendall kind of glossed over, but he did mention that the traffic would be less than what the current zoning for that is. The current zoning was?
It currently is a PUD that has C3 uses, including fast food with drive-thrus and office, and it's got a lot of things in there. So if you really look at a conservative approach, we're still going to reduce the trips per day, and we're going to be about 20% of what would probably be generated by that development.
Thank you. Is there any protests here today? Any questions from council? Seeing none, I'd like to move for approval with the additional, these items of the swimming pool and the 90-day stay added to the PUD.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments or questions on item 8A6 as amended? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kendall. And I think this is an excellent testimony, again, to how a developer working with the neighbors can come up with a solution that is a win-win for both sides. Thank you for sticking with it and working with our neighbors.
Appreciate it.
Item 8A7 is a zoning case in Ward 4. The address is 3442 South Douglas Boulevard. It's currently an R1 single-family residential district and an AE1 airport environs overlay district, and it would become a new PUD. Pete? We have a couple of people that have signed up.
Are the people that are signed up protestants?
Yes, they are.
Why don't we hear from them first before we start? Yeah.
Bob Latham?
Yes, Mayor.
Hi, Bob. We will need your name and address for the record.
My name is Bob Latham. My address is 1800 South Baltimore over in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm an attorney that was hired by Midwest City to come in and take a look at this project and basically voice some concerns related to the development of this piece of property. And I think that one of the issues that we have to look at when we look at changing the current zoning and the AE1 status is why? Why would we do this when we're looking at a piece of property that has some designated usage that is there, that has been there, that's been incorporated into our plan and zoning, and that has reserved this property specifically for industrial uses that would support the continued efforts of airports and Tinker Air Force Base. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this piece of property, it's located at the intersection of I-40 and Douglas Boulevard, which is the southeast corner of the boundary of Tinker Air Force Base. And in looking at this and kind of looking at why would the City Council mess with the golden goose that we have here in Oklahoma City, which is an institution that provides roughly $3 billion worth of economic growth to us. And in looking at the initial report when it came to the staff, overwhelmingly the staff recommended that we not approve this variance change. And they list a host of reasons in there. And basically what it all boils down to, if you look at this and you look at the purpose and the mission of the base, these two objectives, along with our planning and zoning plan that we have for 2000 to 2020, are inconsistent with the use of a freestanding emergency room. The increased traffic, the security risks, the issues and the potential development in this area are very unique. And in looking at this project, we look at it and say, you know what, this is economic development, but it's economic development of a small piece that we look at as we develop 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years into the future. And ladies and gentlemen, in looking at this land that has specifically been designated on the east side of Tinker Air Force Base, we need to be careful. That land is extremely, extremely valuable in the sense that it gives us the ability to have this maximum intended economic growth that we're all looking for as City Council, because this is the area that's been designated to reserve and preserve for this heavy industrial use. We see this already happening just south of where this project is, where the hangars are being built on the east side. There is talk and discussions that potentially at some point in time of closing down Douglas Boulevard and south of this. If we look at the impacts of that and the traffic and the sewer and the issues that are created there, it's just not a good idea. And I think that we know that the base doesn't want this. Colonel Jamerson out at the Air Force Base has absolutely pointed out very, very specifically exactly what the objections are from the military's perspective. If you look at this, it creates issues that adversely impact the aircraft operation, create airport hazards, and potential future base expansion. One of the things that I don't think anybody wants to do is put in jeopardy, and we're not talking about anything that's going to happen in 5 years or potentially 10 years. But in looking at the long-term viability of base, the encroachment of the land around the bases and not having it dedicated and reserved to support industry is one of the key components that the Department of Defense looks at. The AE1 designation preserves this industrial use of this property. And ladies and gentlemen, if we change this piece of property, the next issue is, what about the piece of property just to the south of that, and then the one to the south of that? So I believe that when we look at this piece of property, obviously the Air Force is very clear that they do not support the change and have protested the change.
May I ask a quick question? What's the date on that letter, please?
There are actually two letters. One is dated May 21st of 2010, and then General James Gillette writes one on September 1 of 2010 that indicates that he supports the current SEC plan, JLS policies, and the related zoning guidelines without additional comment. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Supports, excuse me. I think the second letter indicates that they object to the rezoning. They support the current zoning that's applicable to the piece of property, which would be the AE1 overlay. If you look at the Southeast Sector Plan that was derived by the city, it keeps these tenets of preserving this land for the utility of the heavy industrial use. I think that it's a bigger issue than this 7 acres. I think we need to look at this in the scheme of what is the plan and the goal for the development of Oklahoma City. And I just believe that the current zoning and the regulations related to that piece of property should not be changed, and a variance shouldn't be.
Councilor, I have a question. Who is your client?
Midwest City.
The city of Midwest City?
Hospital.
The hospital?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I said that to start off with.
You said Midwest City, and I was
Midwest City Hospital.
Somewhat taken aback that Midwest City would be here
Midwest City
to
Hospital.
talk to us about our zoning.
Thank you.
Paige Vaughn. We will need your name and address for the record.
Yes, Paige H. Vaughn. I'm the CEO at Midwest Regional Medical Center. Reside at 10529 Foxhorn Circle, Oklahoma City address, but it's about 2 miles from the base in Midwest City. I don't want to repeat what Mr. Latham has said, and he is employed by me. When I first got involved in this was with the zoning committee, and obviously I have a competitive interest. That's why I attended, but I'm also very involved in the city of Midwest City and Oklahoma City to some degree. Comstar with the Air Force. When you live in Midwest City, you're very close to the base, so you're really a close neighbor. And get to know people at the base and do a lot of things to support them, such as the honor flights and various other things that all of you have done a great job over the years and support all of us have. And I'm speaking to you concerns from folks in Midwest City and others that I've spoken to just about the project and potential impact on the base. I think there's a lot of, first of all, I'm a hospital administrator. I'm not a planner or zoner, unless it involves a hospital generally. But I spent about the last month delving into all the information. There are a lot of reports. There are a lot of land use plans. There is the ACUS, which involves the air traffic and so on. And I hired Mr. Latham here out of Tulsa to assist with just initially trying to help me determine what we're even looking at. But what I said at the Planning Commission meeting with 3 hours preparation is essentially the same thing today. And the material that I found and I dropped off by your offices is generally in that book. The ACUS is buried in the JLUX plan, but it's the same information. You have 2 letters from the Air Force, one from Colonel Jamerson, who's at Wright-Patterson, who I've called. You have General Gillette, who wrote a letter post-Jamerson's. The base would tell you, as they told me, that one does not usurp the other. they're both in agreement that we have a southeast sector plan that's a 10-year plan that you folks did a lot of work on, and your planning staff recommended denial of this particular project. They're the folks that you pay to advise your planning group and ultimately use their reports and advice. And I'm sure you've read it, I've read it, I have it right here, but it speaks specifically to things, the many elements of this, none the least that the proposed project is right in one of the landing pathways, so, and that's in the ACOS. That conversation I had yesterday with folks at Tinker. So they are quite concerned. I don't want you to think that this is a total issue on my part. I've contacted a lot of people at the base. There's a lot of concern. I would simply ask you, I spent the last month looking at this. I have 2 or 3 minutes to explain my position. But I'll let you know that I speak for a lot of people that have the same interest I think that everyone in the room here has, and that's for not only our national defense, but our largest employer in Oklahoma. This is a decision that I know you'll vote in a couple of minutes, but I would ask you to, if you're not certain about this, I hope I've raised some reasonable doubt, because I spent a month of my time in exploring this myself, and I have reasonable doubt. I have comments from the Air Force, from people that control the flight line. And I called Colonel Jameson. He's not changed his position, and you can call him as well. Call General Gillette. Those are the folks that really will give you the real unbiased opinion on this. And if you have, fine, the facts will stand on their own. But I think as a group that's worked hard for Tinker over the years to have one single project potentially start a chain of events that will ultimately impact the base, it's a very important issue for all of us to consider. But again, I'll be brief, and I thank you for your time. But I do want to state my position for the record.
Thanks, Paige.
Yes, sir.
Pete?
At this point, I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm David Neff, 252 Northwest 70th Street, Oklahoma City. I do find it a little interesting that Midwest City Hospital is here to speak on behalf of Tinker Air Force Base. We, early on in May, when the first letter came out, went through our Oklahoma City Chamber contact and St. Anthony's Hospital, the user, and they met with the base officials and worked out all these things. The first letter addressed a few issues, such as the helicopter pad. They had a concern about that. We eliminated it. They had a concern that if we built a facility there and they wanted to close South Douglas Boulevard, that we would object, and we told them we would not object, that we would actually prefer it. It would give us better access, and we had no problems with any of the concerns that they had. And as far as the joint land use study and the Southeast Sector Plan and the AE1 overlay, we feel that we fit in all those in our I-2 zoning. As far as base expansion goes, as you can see by the shape of the site, there would be no way for them to expand over onto that site because of the I-40 Douglas access. And we prefer that they would expand across there. And I really feel like we've addressed our concerns with Tinker, because all of us in this room know that Tinker Air Force Base is extremely important to the city of Oklahoma City.
Is anyone else, thank you. Is anyone else signed up to speak?
No.
Let me kind of review my own thoughts about this and where I've been on it. I was, as you might imagine, heavily involved with the land use study in southeast Oklahoma City, and I was the city's representative to ACOG on the joint land use study for Tinker. During that time, I listened to literally hours of comment, most of which was from Midwest City, explaining why they shouldn't follow the joint land use rules. And they ultimately did not sign off on the agreement that the rest of the city signed off on with regard to the joint land use study for Tinker. They had a dissenting opinion about how it should work. I committed at that time, and that commitment is, I'm not wavering from that commitment today, that whatever was necessary to protect the environs of Tinker, Oklahoma City would be committed to do. I committed that on behalf of everybody on this horseshoe, and I expect that that's the way we all continue to feel. When I reviewed this application, they brought it to me before they ever filed it. And I said, the first thing you have to do is satisfy the concerns about Tinker. They submitted the letter to Tinker, and Tinker came back with a very wide blast, in my opinion, and I know Colonel Jamerson, he's an honorable guy, but I think he was very poorly advised with regard to that letter. Because when I looked at the things that he complained about in that letter, it was generally the joint land use study drew a line at a certain location, and admittedly this facility is outside that line, but it's awful close. Well, you can't plan that way. That's not the way planning documents are drawn. There's not a gray area immediately to the outside of the area. You're either in the area or you're out of the area. And so this facility is outside the area of every line that's drawn on that joint land use study with Tinker. Every one, sound, flight, everything. It is outside that area. I think the recommendation made by the Planning Commission staff was for disapproval, but that was prior to the time the concessions that were made at the Planning Commission with regard to the elimination of some of the things that were of concern. One of them was the helicopter pad. They had put the helicopter pad in, it's my understanding, because these emergency rooms are, in their standard design, they're always designed with the helipad in it. But they took it out because of that. It was just in the standard design, but they took it out. I just don't find a way to be opposed to this and be fair to all the parties involved. It fits. I believe if the matter was before us, and Russell was here a moment ago, he's here. I believe if the matter came to the Planning Commission staff today, the way it's currently presented, with the current information they have, I doubt, and I'll let him say if he wants to differ with this, I doubt if the recommendation from planning would be negative as it is now, because I think we see that often. We see a recommendation by planning staff that is opposed to a project, and then things go on at the Planning Commission. Changes are made, accommodations are made with neighborhoods, all kinds of things, and that recommendation still comes forward, but the document we're being asked to vote on is not the same one that was submitted to the planning staff. So it's my belief, and I don't want to speak for them. If the planning staff wants to speak, I'd be most happy to hear from them today. But it's my understanding that if this document, as it's presented with the current facts, the recommendation would not be the same. It would be neutral and perhaps a positive. If that's unfair, Russell, either of you could come up here and say something different if you want to. I hate to put words in your mouth.
You're accurate in the evolution of applications as they come before us, and this one is particularly complex. And in addition, there was a lot of discussion, as you're aware of, with Tinker and different personnel at Tinker subsequent to the initial application, which changed the character of the application in that sense. Our opposition was based on the JLUS and the Southeast Sector Plan as those were crafted, because those were crafted with one of the primary purposes being to support Tinker as one of the major economic generators in the community. And there's been some conflicting opinion coming out of Tinker, and it would be very hard for anybody to speak for them without them being here. But it was our understanding that in the end, this was not considered to be in contradiction with their objectives.
I have a question. Was the helicopter landing pad deleted from this?
Yes.
It was. Okay.
And it's my understanding they really never intended to use it. It was just a part of a standard, standalone emergency operation. It was drawn into the plan, and when that was brought to their attention, they took it out. It's my understanding how that worked.
All right.
I
think Meg has a comment.
Okay.
Oh, that's okay. I really just wanted to echo Pete's comments to a great extent. I've had the opportunity to work with the development team and the hospital from the beginning on this project, and really want to compliment everybody for the effort that you've gone through to reconcile some of the challenges. I think this is a great opportunity, and I'm very much in favor of it.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
You know, a lot of the talk is about how this is going to negatively affect Tinker, but if this is when we're voting on it, why is there not a representative of Tinker here? You would think if it was that important to them that there would be somebody here to represent them and speak on their behalf, and I find that a little interesting that there's not.
From going through the joint land use study as the city's representative, it's my view that that's the place where Tinker would appear. It would be unlikely unless they really felt like they were deadly serious about it. They probably wouldn't be here. They would leave that decision up to the cities. I think that to give some credence to what Colonel Jamerson's letter said is I think they would probably write such a letter and would have written the same kind of a letter had Midwest City submitted that shopping center that's across the street north. They probably, if they'd have got the opportunity to write a letter about that, they probably would have submitted a letter similar to that about that shopping center. They didn't have that opportunity because Midwest City, in my opinion, didn't go to them and ask them. I forced these people to do what they did to make sure that we were all on the same page. Tinker Air Force Base is in Oklahoma City. It's not in Midwest City, despite what Midwest City would like to have us believe. It's not in Midwest City. It's in Oklahoma City. The land that it's on is in Oklahoma City. The environs around it, to the extent it's expanded, has been given to it by either Oklahoma County or Oklahoma City, and the majority of it's been given to it by Oklahoma City. Water that's owned with the city as the beneficiary through the land that's owned by the Water Trust, where the city's the beneficiary of the land. Much of that land. The land to the east of Douglas, most all that is owned by the Water Trust, and it's available for expansion by Tinker. I chafe a little bit at any comment that we are not good stewards of our relationship with Tinker, because I think we are. I think we've done. We do everything we possibly can to protect Tinker. It is, without question, one of the larger economic drivers of the state of Oklahoma, not just Oklahoma City, but of the state of Oklahoma. And I'm going to move approval.
Comments or questions? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8A8. It's a planning issue in Ward 8. The address is 11401 Northwest Expressway. It's currently AA agricultural. It would become a PUD. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an exciting project. The applicant is here this morning. I had a brief conversation with him this morning, so I know he's here. Michael, would you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Sure. Michael Navard, 2209 Northwest 57th Street. Here representing the applicant, Village Verde Developers. They're the master developer for the School Land Commission of 480 acres between Mustang Road and Piedmont Road, bisected by Northwest Expressway. It's intended to be a mixed-use development, utilizing Northwest Highway as the commercial corridor, and the remaining areas being residential and built heavily on green principles.
Are there any questions from the council on this particular project? Michael made a comment of green principles, and they're making an extraordinary effort to make this a green community. Water recycling and traffic controls and things like that. The way it's laid out to be a multi-purpose facility, a walkable community, I think is an exceptional development, and one that gives us some direction as where we should go in the future. The only comment or big discussion at the Planning Commission level that I recall was on signage. and there was a lot of discussion. The applicant made some concessions in terms of signing, and the Planning Commission, who has a reputation for being very tough on signing, had brought off on these. So I'm comfortable with the solutions that we've got here. If there are any questions from the council, we've got the applicant here to answer those questions. Has anybody signed up to speak in opposition to this?
No, they have not.
There were no protesters at the Planning Commission level, and absent questions from my colleagues, I move approval.
All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8A9. It's a zoning case in Ward 7. The address is 3201 Mosley Road. It's currently R1 single-family residential and AA agricultural SRO senior scenic river overlay district, and it would become a new PUD. Skip expressed any concerns about this one, or did he hand this project off?
I've had some contact about this, and he has indicated that he is in support of this.
All right. Any comments or questions from anyone on item 8A9? All right. Pete, you want to make a motion?
I move approval.
Cast your vote. Passed unanimously. We're on to item 8A10. It's a zoning case in Ward 8. The address is 13100 Colony Point Boulevard. It's a PUD, and it would become a new simplified plan unit development. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. Is the applicant here this morning? Would you come forward, please, and give us your name and address for the record?
My name's Bob LeVar, 2701 West Britton Road.
And this is an interesting project as well. This is a development also on the Northwest Expressway, and it is a development that will be an electric car sales operation. And I think we're slightly ahead of our time, perhaps, but I think it's a very interesting project. Are there any questions from the council? There were no protesters at the Planning Commission level. Did anybody sign up in protest to this? Okay. Then I would move approval of the project.
Any comments or questions on item 8A10? All right, cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can make one quick comment, Mayor, we're approving a lot of stuff out Northwest Expressway. Are we going to get the water pressure problems closer in fixed before all these new housing additions pop up out there?
We have plans to extend water lines out there. You'll hear more about that under the capital improvement plan presentation later this morning. I'm not surprised.
Item 8A11 is a zoning case in Ward 2. The address is 900 Northwest 62nd Street. It's currently O2 General Office and a PUD, and it would become a new simplified plan unit development. Sam?
Thank you, Mayor. Tim Johnson's here for the applicant.
Yes, sir. Tim Johnson with Johnson Associates, along with David Box and Dan Ladon, who is the applicant, Chesapeake Energy. This is a small block SPUD that we're putting that is surrounded by an existing PUD 1195 that is currently being developed by in the area, parking garages and office buildings. This particular SPUD was submitted to allow us to go up an additional height over and above what the PUD currently allows for a very restricted portion of a building, and that's to allow a restaurant to be put on top of a proposed office building.
I think this is within an approved campus PUD that council approved months ago. It's one block within that PUD, and I am told it changes none of the conditions in the existing PUD except for the specific height amendment on this one building. I think the concerns that neighbors had were expressed at the Planning Commission, and Tim, as I listened to the rehearing, it was mainly of construction issues, not zoning itself. So unless anybody's here today in protest, are there any protests present? I would move approval of this SPUD.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah, Pat. How tall is the building going to be? How many stories will that additional be?
It's adding a sixth floor on just a portion of the building. It'll be a little north.
Essentially a seventh floor on that small portion.
A sixth floor.
Sixth floor. Okay.
It's a five-story building.
And will this be a Chesapeake-occupied building, or will it be open?
Yes, all Chesapeake. The restaurant on top will be all Chesapeake employees.
Will the restaurant be open to the public, or just for the employees?
Just employees.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And Tim, is there an easement? We needed an easement.
The easement has been submitted.
So we're all in accord.
We're good.
Approval.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Thanks, Tim. Item 8A12 is a zoning case in Ward 4. The address is 2212 Southwest 55th Street. It's currently R1 single-family residential. It would become a simplified plan unit development. Pete?
Are there protesters? No one signed up? I'd like to hear from the applicant on this one. I've looked at over all the materials, but I'd like to hear from the applicant.
Thank you. My name is Wayne Gray. I'm at 1524 West Wellington Way. I'm Mustang, Oklahoma. I'm the State Director of Teen Challenge of Oklahoma. We have 4 locations around the state, headquarters right here in Oklahoma City. Do you want me to talk about the project? Would be?
Yeah, I would. I know there were protestants at the Planning Commission, and most everybody on the Horseshoe, and I hope everybody in the world knows my personal advocacy for drug and alcohol, substance abuse recovery programs. I don't recall ever voting against one in a long time, ever voting against one. But saying that, I have never been presented one that is as residential in nature in terms of the residential neighborhood as this one is. All the ones that I've been involved with in the past have been in commercial property that's certainly not used as for residential, as right in the middle of a neighborhood like this one is. So I need some assurance, even though the neighbors gave up and didn't show up today, I need some assurance today from you that I can always give assurance to a hotel that's next door or an office building that's next door, because I've got 30 years of experience now watching those facilities go in and watching them not have an impact on their surrounding environment. I don't have 30 years of experience watching them go in where they border a residential neighborhood. And so I would like a little more details and some more assurance that this is not going to be problematic.
Yes, sir. Teen Challenge is not traditional treatment. We provide faith-based recovery services. That's the term Washington gave us during the faith-based initiative. We are not transitional housing. They're not early release from prison. We do not take violent offenders.
Let me just ask you some questions.
Yes, sir.
Do you accept people that are under the control of the Department of Corrections?
In some of our facilities, we do. I think it came up in this one that was a point of concern, and we said that we would not take anybody that is sentenced to there. We never take people that are early released from prison in any of our facilities.
I understand that.
Some do come to us in lieu of going to jail for their offense. That was a concern, so at this particular location, we will not.
Okay, if someone comes to your facility, and this is based on years of experience about how you get your clientele, if someone comes to your facility because he's been charged with a crime, many lawyers rightfully believe that they can send people to facilities like yours and like lots of others in Oklahoma City, and when they go before the judge, they can say, I'm at Teen Challenge, I'm at First Step, I'm at whatever program they're in, I'm at Catalyst. And that the judge will take that as a positive thing and say, okay, as long as you stay there, then I'll defer your sentencing until you complete a program. Would you keep that, if a person did that, would you keep that person in this facility?
Well, we would know about that all up front. Sometimes when someone gets in trouble with a drug-related offense, if it's a non-violent offense, and they choose, and they maybe said you need to go get some help, they would choose us.
Right.
Again, we have a screening process.
So you won't let them in on the front side. If they tell you they have a charge pending, you won't let them into your facility.
At this particular facility, we said that we...
I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm telling you, I may be your best friend. So
yes, we will. If we've looked into it and we've screened, and then that it's a non-violent. It's usually drug-related, sometimes like theft to support their habit, things like that. So yes.
The reason I ask this question in particular is there are a number of facilities in the city that are there with the implicit in their in their planned unit development. They cannot house people that are sentenced there or that are there under any kind of a court order. I have one in mind in particular that has been in consistent violation of that, although that's what it says in their planned unit development. And it's my understanding they'll be coming back before us. But that's important, I think, to the neighborhood to know that there will be no one there that is there criminally, that they're just there because of their addiction problem.
Correct. That's exactly what we stated last time, that we would honor that. Again, our residents don't have cars either. They don't come and go. We're long-term, and it's not transitional.
I understand, and I doubt very seriously if this will have any impact on their neighborhood except positive. I've seen this before.
Yeah.
But I think we need some kind of assurance that this facility, because it is the first one that I know of that's going to be in a purely residential neighborhood, that that's not a voluntary program like an Oxford House or something. This is a purely run by someone, by an entity other than the addicts themselves. I think the neighborhood and the city itself needs some assurance about what I'm being redundant, but I'm still not 100% sure that you follow what I say. If someone comes there because they have a charge pending, they're not convicted. It's not a violent charge, but they're there in an effort to try to get a better deal from the judge, which I will tell you is a huge source of your business. I mean, people don't come to treatment because they see the light. They come because they feel the heat. So if that happens, and the judge then says, okay, as long as you're there, are you going to keep that person there? Is that person still going to stay in your facility?
If the judge would have allowed it, if they've been through our screening process.
As long as he's not court ordered, you're going to keep him there?
Yes. Because
if he is, you'll move him? Is that what you're telling us? You will move him if he's court ordered? You'll to another facility that doesn't
We have another facility in southwest Oklahoma, yes.
That you could move him to if they were convicted?
If he was court ordered.
Okay. Is there a way that this can be done with a review? Again, all of you have heard me advocate for these kind of facilities, but I've never been put in position to advocate for one in a residential area before. And I want to just be sure that we're okay, because it is residential. You can look at the map. I mean, you see houses, those houses all around there. I personally don't have any qualms about it, but I don't want to take any chances either.
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yeah. Go ahead, your name and address for the record,
I'm
please.
Gary Shockley, 1941 South Council, and I am a retired stormwater manager for Oklahoma City, and I'm on the board for Teen Challenge for Oklahoma now. But I wanted to point out, because it's been mentioned several times, that it's a residential area. This is a 5-acre tract, and there's apartments on the west side, and there's commercial buildings and restaurants on the south side. So we really, this is, if you look at the map here, the only residential is on the east side of the property, on the north side. But most of the other property on the west and south is all commercial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I'm just being purely candid with you. I've never moved the approval on one that bordered residential like this one does, ever.
Right. But that's the whole point here, is that the actual facility that's going to be used is those south buildings here, and the church will still be there on the north side.
This is a zoning case, as you know, and zoning runs with the property. You can rezone it, and you can put a review provision in the PUD, but if it comes to the point where you think that they're in violation of the PUD and you want to revoke it, they'll require rezoning. So they'll have to go through the city could initiate a down zoning at that point.
I remember years ago when we did Southgate, I was standing there. We did Southgate because it was a hotel, but it was in a very commercial area, but it did border some residential areas, and we put a review on that, did we not?
I don't recall. Bob may know.
It's been a long time ago. But you guys have been here long enough to remember a long time ago.
That one was...
I can.
That was different. It was a special permit.
Right.
It wasn't the zoning of the property, so that's how we did it there. This is a...
I do recall that whatever requirement that was put on us, it passed muster at the end of that period of time. It was fine, and I don't have any reason to think this one won't either. But I would like to have some, like 18 months or something, where they have to come back and make a report to us about the...
You could put that in the PUD. I'm just saying to remove the PUD.
I know what you're saying.
So, review. Certainly, the council could require.
It's the bully pulpit as opposed to the hatchet.
Yes, sir.
I understand. Would you agree to that, to come back in 18 months, or not necessarily come back, but submit a report to the council in 18 months as to this current status and what's happened?
Yes.
And have a public hearing if necessary? I'm believing it won't be necessary, but there is a side of me that says I need to be more cautious than I do optimistic sometimes.
Yes, sir. I would be willing to do that.
Okay. What do we need to do to make sure that, is this good enough? Amen, is good enough?
You could just make an amendment to put that provision for review in the PUD.
Make that as your motion, then we'll get an amended document.
Okay. I move approval subject to a 18-month review, and Bob, you guys can work out the details of that. I don't anticipate they would necessarily have to come back, but I would like for them to have to make a report to us, and then we could set it to talk about if, in fact, there's any problems with it. Again, I don't anticipate there will be any, but I just want to be careful. Okay? All right. Thank you.
Cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 8A13 is in Ward 1. The address is 4710 North Warren Avenue. It's a plan unit development, and it would become a simplified plan unit development. Gary?
Do we have any protesters?
No one has signed up.
Is the applicant here? If you could come forward just for a quick second, please. Just for council's memory, this was a much larger development that was going to happen, and actually a street was going to come off of Warren and go into a development that had smaller lots on it, and the economics have not worked out on this situation. So it is reverting back to R1s simply along Warren, and it's my understanding the back part of the property is going to go back to the Elks. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. For the record, my name is Dwight Butler with Anchor Engineering, represent the applicant. And yes, sir, Mr. Mars, the current owner has led me to believe that is what he's going to do with the property. We even initially had it requested to be zoned back to AA so that it would match the Elks Lodge. Right. And staff's recommendation, we changed it to R1. And there's not going to be a parking lot. That was, as came out on one staff report.
Right. So I don't have any problem with this, and with no protesters here, I'd move approval.
All right, we have a motion and a second. We're voting on item 8A13. Cast your votes. Passed unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Item 8A14 is in Ward 2. The address is 2905 Northwest 70th Street. It's a plan unit development. It would become a new simplified plan unit development. Sam?
Mayor, in some respects, like the last case, the economics of this didn't work either, and the current PUD is being amended in this application to just expand the number of uses in the PUD to make the property more marketable. Rick Larzalier is the applicant. I've talked with you a couple times, haven't met you, sir. Any protest here today? We're not at Planning Commission. Does council have any questions of the applicant with regards to expanded uses? I'd move for approval.
All right, cast your votes on item 8A14. Passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Item 8B is for a special permit to operate a moderate impact institutional use, expansion of a middle school campus at 1703 Northwest 150th Street. That's in Ward 8. Pat?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is an existing campus. There's a middle school and an elementary school at this location. Edmond Public Schools. It's a large campus. There were no protests. Is the applicant here this morning? Applicant is here this morning. Are there any questions to the applicant by the members of the council? Does anybody sign up to talk on this one? There were no protesters, and I think it's a good project. I move approval.
All right, cast your votes. Passes unanimously. Item 8C is a name change, Far North Oklahoma City, Ward 8. Pat?
I can't imagine any street named Andy Tough anyway, but I think this is a good improvement. Street name, there were no protesters, and the city's recommended this be done this way, so I move approval.
All right, cast your votes. And it passes unanimously. On to item 8C. And this is a joint resolution with the Water Utility Trust approving a modified citywide pretreatment program, and we have a companion item that will follow.
Second.
All right, cast your votes on the resolution. Resolution passes. Now we have an ordinance. This is the final hearing on item 8E. Motion?
Move the item.
Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. We're on item 8F. This is a list of dilapidated structures, and it's a public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8F? All right, how about a motion then? Cast your votes on 8F, and it passes unanimously. We're on to item 8G. This is a public hearing regarding unsecured structures. There are 7 items listed. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8G? All right, looks like we're good to go. Cast your votes, and it passes unanimously. Item 8H is a public hearing. It's a resolution creating a street improvement assessment district. We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak. The address of this property is 1620 Burtondale Addition. It's at Harvey Avenue and Northwest 68th Street.
Mr. Mayor, we've had a request from the applicant yesterday to defer it for 4 weeks. And the reason we did not bring it up under items for uncontested deferral is that Mr. Grove, who represents the opposition, did not agree to that. So we're here, and the applicant has still, I believe, requested a 4-week continuance, or that's their request at this point.
I'm John McKee, and I have an interpreter here with me. I have a couple of artillery ears, and I can't hear that well, so I hope you don't mind. This is Ron Blaylock, who is an applicant. I am here as an applicant, and then we have a third person, Jack Sargent, who is not here with us. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you were saying, City Manager. You can say it again, and maybe Ron will tell me.
I understand you requested a 4-week continuance on this item. Your attorney did.
I think we're ready to go if Eric's here, so.
All right, well, let's go. Sam, this is in Ward 2. How do you want to handle this? We have a couple of people that have signed up to speak, and obviously the applicant's here.
Mayor, I'd just like some advice from legal. I've been informed that we really don't have the opportunity to take any action on this, that from a legal standpoint, the number of, I'd just like that confirmed. The percent of protesters is greater than 50%, that is protesters with adjoining ownership, and we don't have any standing. That's, I mean, we can, I'd like to hear more, but I understand we don't have the...
There are 12 total property owners in the district. 9 of those have submitted written protests to the city clerk. Under the statute, if 50% or more of the number of owners in the district protest, the statute says the district shall not be created. Therefore, with the present protest, the council really can't approve the district.
So it sounds like our discretion may have been removed. Kenny, you confirm?
I would like an opportunity to explain that if I could. I don't.
Do you understand, though, that we don't have the discretion to rule in your favor?
Number one, they are in error on their numbers. They don't. I say it's a wash on the numbers, 50 and 50.
But that's probably an issue then that needs to be addressed outside of the council chambers. You may very well be right, but how can we address that issue, Dan, if he's contesting the accounting?
We have the signatures from the protestants. We have checked the legal ownership, and they are more than 50%. I think there's a distinction. There's two types of protests that can be filed. One is based on the area of protest, and the other is based on the number of people property owners in the district. They have close to a majority of the property and area, but they only have 25% of the actual numbers of the people who own property in the district.
And that is incorrect. That's wrong. So what do? He thinks he's right. I say we're right. The city council has. Well, that's all we can do. Ask you to decide it.
We have signed protests from the owners of record as shown on the current year's tax rolls. If they want to produce evidence that these people are not property owners, that's the only thing that I can think of. We have not seen any evidence to date of that.
All right, so you could present evidence that these people are not property owners.
I have it right here. I got the evidence. Anybody want to see it or hear it? They are using, for one of their protests, they are using a person that owns a 1/4 interest in the lot.
You know,
we get the other three. Okay.
That may very well be pertinent, but we're not going to deal with. We're not going to deal with that.
Well, how do I deal? What do we deal with? This is an
applicant. Can we defer this until he can look at it?
Can we do that? Can we defer this time for their challenge to be heard and come back?
I'd like to be heard. And
just a minute. I want to know if we can do that.
The council can always defer the item if that's your decision.
Okay.
They're interpreting this statute. Let me explain the way they're interpreting it. If you have a person that owns 1,000 lots, and you have one that owns a 1/4 interest in a 25-foot lot, the other guy owns 1,000. They are saying the one that has the 1/4 interest in one lot has the same weight as the guy that owns 1,000 lots. That's ridiculous. And we would like a hearing on it.
I understand your contention. You don't need to communicate that anymore.
I would like to defer it to allow that legal challenge.
Okay. Before we defer, we probably ought to hear from Eric. Thank you all for coming. You can sit down.
What do you want us to do?
I want you to sit down until I can hear from Eric.
What?
He wants us to sit down until he hears Mr. Grove.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is Eric Groves. I'm an attorney. I represent Clements Foods. I'm going to try to change your mind about this, Sam. So I didn't want to get into the merits of it, but there is absolutely no point to deferring this and continuing it any further. Here's the situation. The statute, as Mr. Brummett characterized it, which is correct, there's two different ways to protest a special assessment district. Either the land can vote or the property owners can vote. In this instance, the property owners voted. Now, how do we know who those property owners are? Because the applicant, in its engineer's report, identified them. The applicant drew the district. All you got to do is look at the district. You can see who the property owners are. There are 12 different property owners in the district. 3 of those property owners are the proponents: Blaylock, Caprice Sargent, and Mr. McKee. They're the proponents. So of the 12 owners of property in the area, 3 vote yes. There are 9 others. My office, on behalf of Clements Foods, went out and solicited their vote against this project. And I didn't make copies because I didn't think it would be necessary, but here's the written protest. We took them out and got them signed by 9 of the 12 property owners. Now, Clements Food is one of those, and then there are some people that only own smaller lots, but they all signed. And the statute requires written protests, and so we obtained them. We filed them with the city clerk well in advance of this hearing, and then we wrote a letter brief to the members of this council, and we put copies in the brief so that each one of you could see that we had them. Then, of course, the municipal councilor looked at the protest petitions, and I coordinated that with Mr. Brummett. And what the municipal councilor's office wanted to do was to be sure that the people who signed the protest petitions owned the land they said they did. Well, we know they did because we checked it against the county records. And, of course, they signed attesting that they owned the land, and they voted no. Now, what the municipal councilor's office is saying today, and they'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that they have taken each one of these protest petitions, filed with the city clerk, copies of which provided to you, made sure that these were the people that owned the land, and counted up the votes. Well, it's 9-3. Now, not only am I telling you that, but your own lawyers are telling you that. So if this were to be deferred, what could possibly be accomplished by the next time it's heard? Because you can't alter reality. The land records are what they are. These people are the owners. These petitions are what they are. They add up. The council does not have the legal authority to create the district at this level of protest. There are other reasons why this improvement district needs to be defeated. The petition itself is invalid. But the municipal councilor didn't deal with that issue. But I don't know what can be accomplished in a week unless Kenny or Dan could tell you what's going to change between now and next week. Nothing.
All right. Sam, what do you want to do?
I understand your argument, Eric. What's being asked, if I understand it, and I'd like to hear this from legal, is that the protestants or the other side are challenging the level of the authority of the protest. And I understand it's 9 signatures versus 3. They're challenging those 9 signatures. And
well, what is the nature of the challenge? What are they saying? These are not.
That's what I want to hear from our municipal council. Is that a legal challenge, or is this case moot?
I mean, it's over with. It can't be changed now. But Dan will answer your question, I think, Councilman.
We've reviewed the ownership, and it appears to us that the owners that signed the petitions are the owners of record as they appear on the county assessor's rolls.
Dan, is anybody going to suffer any harm, though, if you give them an opportunity to try to rebut that for a week? I mean, as a matter of courtesy, Eric, we've extended continuances to you in this very case.
Sure, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, and they've never asked for one. Don't. I'm trying to help you. Who's going to be harmed by it? I mean, these people filed a protest that they thought was legal. It may not have been. You've got all kinds of great arguments that say it's not. It went all the way through because of an error. That whole thing had to be started over. It's my understanding that error was not theirs. That error was an internal problem. Yes. But we've put them through a lot for nothing.
Can I respond?
So it seems to me only equitable that we give them at least another week to try to refute your argument.
Councilman, let me respond in 2 ways. First of all, I did request a deferral so that we would have time to gather these signatures, but the deferral was also requested by staff. In fact, when I mentioned that to Mr. Couch, he said, well, staff is...
I suspect if Sam asked Dan one more time if he'll do a deferral,
the answer to the question is...
He'll agree.
I'm not arguing that we will suffer any prejudice, any unlawful prejudice as a result of a deferral. What I'm saying is that there's an economy to these things. That means I have to come down here again, charge my client for it, and I just don't see a reason. I'm not trying to be discourteous, Councilman, but I don't see any merit to the reason for the continuance.
It seems to me that
and it's been answered that it sees no irreparable harm. I don't think there's any merit in continuing the discussion today, and I'm just going to move for a week. Defer.
Sam, Meg, you want to say something?
I just want to say one thing. What I think I'm hearing is not that anybody's considering that these signatures are invalid, but somebody's questioning the weight of the signature.
I think they're saying that there are additional property owners. They're claiming 18 property owners.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm claiming. You say there's, I'm claiming more, I'm claiming 96, really. I think the statute has been construed completely erroneously. I don't agree with that. I say one owner goes with one lot. Lot 1, that's an owner. Lot 2, that's an owner. Lot 3, that's an owner. I say that's statute. Now, if I can't get you to agree to that, they are wrong on the property owners. There's actually 18. I know that.
Mr. McKee.
There's 9 and 9. That's a split. So, okay.
We're trying to get you a week.
Sorry.
We're trying to get you a week.
Do what?
We're trying to get you a week.
Okay, fine.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any other comments or questions from council? All right, cast your votes on the deferral. That item is deferred for 1 week.
May I speak? I know that you've already done this business, but let's talk about equity here. Let's talk about what's good for the city of Oklahoma City. We're wanting to do some development out there that will create jobs. When the streets are built, that will create jobs.
I don't think the relevance of this is what's before us. It's whether or not the council has discretion to even consider the relevance. That seems to me where we are. I don't think we want to get into the merits of it until we determine whether or not we have the discretion.
May I ask a question of the counselor? If I have a 3,125 square foot lot, and I sell off 30 pieces of that lot, 100 square feet each, can I come in here and say I've got all these owners of the lots, and that we are outnumbered to the other people? I mean, this is ridiculous.
Sir, you're bringing up an issue that we've already decided to defer a week until legal can tell us what the answer is. We understand your contention. Dan, do you want to say something when we close this matter? No. Okay, we're good. Thank you. We'll have 1 week to determine from a legal standpoint, and we'll revene on the issue next time. Thank you all for coming down. All right, we're on to item 8I. This is the resolution that will terminate the trust that we created at the beginning of the meeting. I want to thank Pat, Larry, and Gary for their service.
You know, I've been accused of killing a lot of organizations before, but never this quick.
In an hour and a half, you're done.
I'll move the termination.
We've seen enough. Cast your votes, and that trust has been terminated.
Actually, Mayor, the trust will have to have a meeting, one meeting. There's some property that the trust owns that has to be disposed of. There are 2 hangars at Wiley Post Airport and a tract of property, a 5-acre tract approximately out by the Witcher Treatment Station, and then the trust will vote to terminate itself, and then it will come back to the council.
I see. So this resolution is the first step in the termination. So it's active right now.
Yeah, they get to have 1 meeting.
I see. Well, I misled everyone.
And Mayor, if I could just make there was a typo in the second sentence. It talks about 4 water mains, and it's FOR, and I believe that was FOUR.
Okay. All right, we're on to item 8J. Understand we do not need executive session?
Do not.
Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8K, understand we do not need executive session? Cast your votes. Passed unanimously. Item 8L, I understand we do not need executive session. Cast your vote. Passed unanimously. Item 8M, I understand we do need executive session.
Move the aye.
Okay. And that item is moved to executive session. Item 8N is claims recommended for denial. There are 5 items. Is there anyone here wishing to speak under any item listed under 8N? Claims recommended for denial. All right. Looks like we're good to go. Cast your votes. Those items are denied. And item 9 is claims recommended for approval. There is 1 item. Cast your votes. That claim is approved. And we're on to items from council. Gary?
I don't have anything, Mayor, but I noticed we have a scout in the audience, and that usually tells me they're working on a badge of some kind.
Sure.
Won't you come up and give us your name and what school you go to and what badge you're working on?
My name is Ian Hensley. I go to Troop 15, located in First Presbyterian. I am currently working on my Citizenship in the Community Merit Badge. One of those requirements for the merit badge is to attend a public meeting and then write a report up on the issue that I think is most important.
And what item will that be that you're going to write about?
Probably the infrastructure report, the infrastructure issue, the one in the first part of the meeting where you were talking about the roads.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you for your attendance today. Good luck on the badge.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming down.
Sam?
Mayor, just to comment on one of the city manager's reports, proactive code enforcement update. Jim, appreciate this periodic updating, and particularly to see the success of this program. Just to pull from the report itself, that we are continuing to see a decrease in citizen complaints in those proactive areas compared to a growing number of increases in the non-proactive areas, the rest of the city. I think this speaks so well to the emphasis that we've all put on proactive code enforcement and the fact that it's working and working effectively. Thank you. Just a couple of other quick comments. The northwest 23rd streetscape between Villa and I-44, between Ward 6 and Ward 2, after about a year and a half, last Friday, is complete. That's been just a real ordeal for the last school year and the early part of this school year. 3 schools just right at that intersection of May and 23rd. And it's just a happy conclusion. Dennis Clowers and Ed DeGraffenreid in particular to just keep this thing moving. I know we've had easement issues and utility realignments that have caused the delays and necessary delays. And I think people have been generally patient with this long ordeal, but it's just good to see us on the other side. And one last thing, some very good publicity last week in the paper with regards to Paseo being selected by the American Planning Association's 10 Great Neighborhoods for 2010. The first time any section neighborhoods project in Oklahoma has ever been selected by the American Planning Association. And just to see in the company that we're in with respect to this year's award, Lower Downtown, Lobo in Denver, Back Bay in Boston, and Frank Lloyd Wright Historic District in Oak Park, Illinois, just to mention a few of the company we're in. What I'd like to ask, Mayor, and I would presume that our good planning department, who helped with this whole nomination process and made this possible, could help with a recognition and perhaps some kind of certificate that we do at a subsequent council meeting with respect to this award. And this is not just recognizing the last couple of years of the art festival. This goes back 25, 30 years when the redevelopment of this neighborhood started. A lot of those people, John Belt being one, but a lot of the others are still in place. And I think it just would be most fitting at a subsequent council meeting if we could bring some of those people together, recognize this, and make such an appropriate award.
It's a good idea. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Larry?
A couple of quick things, Your Honor. Thank you. I'd like to congratulate the neighbors in the Wand area for their meeting last Tuesday night. We had over 75 people in attendance at the initial planning for the Strong Neighborhood Initiative, the new approach to developing strong neighborhoods within Oklahoma City. The meeting was very, very productive. There'll be another meeting November 8th as we continue to try to plan for what that area of Oklahoma City will look like. I'd like to also thank the neighbors at Wood Run for their hospitality last night at their neighborhood meeting. And also, if you pass on to Chief City, Jim, my thanks to Sergeant Hale and Sergeant Epperly, the 2 community relations officers from Santa Fe and Hefner, who came out and answered the citizens' questions concerning police in the area and what the neighbors can do to reduce crime. And let me make an interesting little commercial from what I learned from that. They shared that the most crimes that had occurred in that neighborhood were automobile break-ins occurring at night, and they were all occasioned by the fact that the people who had parked their cars either on the street or in their driveway had left visible electronic equipment, purses, other things of value. And the advice was, please, when you leave your car out, do not leave in plain sight valuables, because that's what's attracting these criminals, and that's what's causing the break-ins. And then also on Sunday, the Windsor Oaks folks had a great social at the Jack Cornett Park and the new pavilion out there, and their comments were just very positive about the construction work. I've already talked to Wendell, but the neighbors were just so impressed by what had been done with that new veranda out there for neighborhood gatherings. I'd like to encourage all the neighborhoods to use your city park for occasions like that to put them to good use. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Larry, thanks. Pete? Brian?
There's a sewer project going on in South Oklahoma City, realignment, new sewer, and one thing that I've experienced with this is that we need to do a lot better job communicating to the citizens. They're frustrated out there because they're getting multiple different stories, and I've tried to get the story, and I'm kind of getting multiple different stories, and I don't know if it's a lack of information passing back and forth. I'm not exactly sure what it is. I'm going to try to clarify that today, but we really need to do a lot better job at making sure that when a story is told to a citizen, that somebody else from the city doesn't come behind and have a completely different story or series of events or what is going on, because then the citizens just get very, very frustrated and they don't believe anything that we say. So hopefully my situation will work out, but we really need to focus on making sure that the story is the same across the board.
Peg?
Very briefly, Mayor, thank you. I was absent last week, and so I want to step back a week and just congratulate a couple of neighborhoods for the weekend of October 9th and 10th. Plaza District had a fabulous festival on 16th Street. It was Mesta Festa weekend. We had the Devon Boathouse opening, and Rebuilding Together had a fantastic soapbox derby between 4th and 5th on Walker that was incredibly fun. People were everywhere in downtown, and I just think it maybe was the busiest weekend I've ever seen in downtown Oklahoma City. So great effort on behalf of the neighborhoods and other projects bringing our citizens downtown.
All right. Thanks, Pat.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing this morning.
All right. City manager reports.
Councilman Bowman has already commented on the proactive code report, but I've asked Jane Abraham this morning to come forth and give us a little bit of an update on the Land Run sculpture. I don't know. We're continuing to add pieces. It's been a long-term project, and I want to let you know how it's going and where we are.
Good morning. I'm Jane Abraham with the City Manager's Office, and I just wanted to give you a quick status report on the Centennial Land Run Monument. I don't know if y'all have had an opportunity to go down to that area recently. We've had some recent installations, and so just wanting to kind of give an update on where we are on the project. Just a little bit of background. It's jointly funded with federal, state, and city funds. It's being sculpted by artist Paul Moore, who is very highly regarded in the artistic world, in the sculpture world. And as of August, we've got 24 of the sculptures installed in the area, and he is currently working on the next 5 pieces, and that's typical. There's usually about 5 pieces that are in various stages of production, I guess you'd call it. And so just kind of an update on the area itself. We put these signs in this last, probably about a year ago. We had some issues with people coming in and climbing on the statues, and the response when they were told to get off was, there's nothing here telling me that I can't climb on the statues. So we've included these signs in the area as notification that they're not to be climbed on there, to be just looked at. And this is a view, so from the canal, looking back to the east, and this is the large grouping of the largest grouping of the sculptures that's quite filled out. There's 2 covered wagons, several horses and riders, and the kind of the signature piece that's been in from the beginning that everyone really recognizes. That's looking at a side view of that grouping. And this is now looking back toward the west. Sort of, there's been a lot more on the west side of the canal, filling in some of that area that's sort of toward the beginning of the line. It's a line of horses and riders and buggies all sort of jockeying with one another. And then this is further, shows kind of the beginning of that area. There's a small rabbit sculpture that's just right kind of out of the picture that was in City Hall for quite a while before, when the project was first started. And then this just shows some of the detail in the sculptures. You can see with the leather tooling and some of the real detail that that Paul Moore has put into the sculptures is really exquisite. And the other picture shows the kind of the beginning of the run. So it's at the end of the line where the soldier and the cannon are located. And then this is just another view looking toward the west, and shows some of the landscaping that we have in there. There's native grasses that have been installed in the area to make it look more realistic and make it look like they're running across the prairie. And then this just shows more of the landscaping in the area. It's a very beautiful area. So that's just kind of an update on where we are. If anybody has any questions.
Shane, the general location of the next 5 pieces will be?
There's some, there will be one that's coming right out of the water that's also on the west side of the canal, sort of where it's less filled in. There's going to be more pieces coming in there. There's also a buggy and a horse that will be installed in that area as well. So that's 1, 2, 3, and then there's a horse and rider that'll be toward the back.
On the west side?
More on the east side, between the soldier and the sort of toward the back of that group, and then another horse and rider that's on the east. So it's kind of filling in more of that area that doesn't have as many pieces.
And the total number when completed?
We've got funding for 38 of the pieces. And that's the original vision started out with 45 sculptures, but then 7 pieces were deferred because of limited funding. And so we've got funding in place for 38.
Jane, just on the sculpturing, has it not turned out that the monumental nature of this project has been so big that Paul Moore is doing everything he can just to keep his lights on and keep moving, to keep another project going? Has he entered into some contract with another artist that I hear some part of the sculpturing to just help speed up his time?
No, he's doing the sculpturing in his studio, and then he works with both of his sons work with him on the various phases of production, but he is doing the actual sculpting.
But we have gone to multiple foundries.
Correct.
And so we brought another foundry into the mix.
Yes, that's correct. So we'll have pieces in 2 different foundries at the same time. And that's really helped to speed production over the last few years.
Well, it's a beautiful project.
May I just
Yes.
add a very quick question, Jane, or maybe to the manager? I was down there recently in that parking lot, and you get all the way to the edge of the sculpture, and you're tantalizingly close to the boathouse row and also to the rock climbing venue down there. Is there any consideration, has there been any thought of a pedestrian bridge or some way to connect that parking lot over to the other side?
Right, that's a bond project from 2007.
Okay.
And we're in the process right now of doing advanced engineering on that project, and would anticipate that would be in the sale of 11.
All right.
So what we're going to do is actually extend the river up underneath the new I-40. The bridge is already in place, and we'll extend the river up and just make a pedestrian connection between the existing canal and the river.
One other thing, Mayor. The parking lot that is really the entrance to the statues is owned by Urban Renewal. Has there been any consideration that the city, in some time in the future, look to acquire that piece of property just to protect, in the sense of a park use versus a eventual commercial development that we once had proposed several years ago, are we looking at any consideration of a park protection that would take our own acquisition of that?
Well, I'm not sure the issue's the parking lot, but maybe more the property of land that's down there. There's a optional site down there that could be, upon council approval, be redeveloped, but that's, there's nothing planned at this point in time. You'd have to be in the loop before that to go forward.
And that would be that frontage that leads?
Yeah, it'd be the area north of the lantern sculpture on the west side of the parking lot.
All right, any other comments or questions? All right, Jane, thank you.
All right, thank you.
That it? City manager reports?
Yes, sir.
All right, citizens to be heard, Dr. W.M. Scheer. Dr. Scheer, we will need your name and address for the record, please.
W.M. Scherer. I live at 633 Culberson Drive, 2 blocks from the governor, and you would think that would be a safe area, but it has been brought to my attention by my Shih Tzu dog that it's not safe. It was required that I had to be out of town, and in being out of town, my dog was supposed to have been in the backyard, but she came in the front yard. And I didn't know that until I came back from Tulsa. In coming back, she wasn't where she was supposed to have been. And in being absent, I was absent. She went in her safe place, which was near the corner of the house, where the steps are. A man came by who was a neighbor, and he and his dog tracked my dog down and killed her with a chain around her neck, and that's what he did, and walked on away. And when I came back, I looked for my dog, couldn't find the dog, and 3 days later, he came by and said what he did to my dog. So if he can come by and do this to my dog in my yard, then I feel unsafe in that neighborhood. He never apologized, but he just told me that I had a different idea as to safety with him. So what I would like to do is for the council to come up with some kind of remedy to the safety of your people in that neighborhood.
Okay. Dr. Scheer, thank you.
I just want to say I have copies of my proposal, if you would like.
Sure, you can pass those out. You want to just hand them to Gary, and he'll hand them to each of us.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming down. We have executive session, so we'll go in there, come back, and adjourn the council meeting, and then reconvene as the Finance Committee. Let's go into executive session first.
We've returned from executive session, and we are adjourned for the council meeting. I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee meeting. Jim, do you want to introduce the speakers?
I would, if you don't mind. I'll give you a little preview as we go into it. This is our capital plan. It's what we do every 2 years, and we're going to give presentations this morning. Craig Freeman's going to give an overview, and then we're going to be followed by Chiefs Bryant City, OC Maps, Parks, Public Works, and the Water Department. This is not the last step in the process. This is the first step in the process. You have not seen this proposed 5-year plan until today. We're going to give you an overview presentation on it, and then it's going to go off to boards and commissions. It's going to go to the Parks Commission, the Game and Fish Commission, the Water Trust, the School Trust, the Airport Trust, and all kinds of other areas out there to get feedback and go through that type of process, and then we'll be brought back at a future date. So, you haven't seen this yet. It's the first step in the process. We're going to go and have a lot of steps before we actually take official action on it today. So with that, bit of an oversight. Craig?
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just jump to the next one. Yeah. Basically, Jim's kind of given the introduction here on what the plan is and what's included. This does include projects, capital projects, for over the next 5 years for both our trusts and the city funds. And this is really the only place that we pull this information all together. And so as we go through this, we have a planning process that we follow. And initially, the plans are developed by our departments. They develop those plans based on council priorities, on feedback from citizen survey, on issues they've identified, on master plans, on implementation plans that they've developed either through their trust or like with the Maps for Kids projects. All of those funnel into this, as well as the GO bond projects and the GO bond program funnel into this to prepare the 5-year plan. After that, it is introduced to the boards and commissions and trusts, comes to the council for introduction. It will now go to the Planning Commission as well. The Planning Commission will review it. The Planning Department will provide a review and staff comments in relation to how the plan fits with the comprehensive plan. And then we'll come back to the City Council in about 5 or 6 weeks for final approval. Between now and then, you do have your capital plan book, the document, and it has every one of the projects included in the plan are listed here. There's information about each one of the projects. They're summarized by department, and then the departments are summarized alphabetically. And so if you look at any of the projects, you have any questions, if you get those to us, we'll work with the departments and get responses to you prior to coming back at the end of November. Just a quick overview financially as we look at the plan. Basically, if we look at it by funding source, the GO bond program is 25% roughly. That's infrastructure projects primarily. There are some public safety projects and some transit projects in there as well. But primarily, it's infrastructure projects. The source of funding as we look at this really is property tax. It's GO bonds pay for the projects, but the property tax pays the debt service. So ultimately, the source of funding is property tax. On the trust funds, that combines in to include the Water and Wastewater Utilities Trust. That may be cash-funded projects or it may be bond-funded projects. Either way, they're paid back with the service fees that are paid by the ratepayers. The trust funds also include the airport trust, and that's paid by passenger fees that are charged. So that's the funding source for the trust fund projects for airports. Grants, the largest portion of our grants come from our airports. That's followed by the transit funds that we receive, grant funds we receive. The special tax funds would be our special sales taxes like the Maps for Kids tax, the sports facilities tax, and then those companion use taxes. Like we've talked about, the city and schools use tax has been used over the last several years to provide for public safety fleet replacement, so that's included in this category. Unfunded is a large portion of the projects, and there's a couple of ways that we identify unfunded projects. One example would be projects that we know the funding source that we plan to use, but we have not approved it. The city and schools use tax is a good example of that being used for public safety fleet. A decision was made by the council a few years ago to annually approve that allocation of funds. And so for next year, for this current year, we do have that funded for fleet replacement. But in the out years beyond this next year, we show that as unfunded, even though we know the funding source that we plan to use. In that example, the city and schools use tax won't continue through the 5 years of the capital plan to fund police and fire fleet replacement. We'll have to move to the MAPS 3 use tax
from that portion. But again, that will be decided each year as we come to that point and we're ready to budget for those projects. Other projects that are unfunded are also projects where either a trust or a department has identified projects that are needed, and they believe they're needed over the next 5 years, some type of planning or design or construction on the projects, but the funding source has not been identified. And that is a significant amount of those projects. But a lot of times it's to help us in our planning so that it brings those projects to the awareness or attention of the council. And so some of the projects that are listed and that are unfunded, if we don't identify a funding source for those, will not be completed during this time. Overall, the total funding for the capital plan is just over 1.9, almost $2 billion for the 5 years of the plan. Looking at the projects by function of government, public services is by far the largest. The vast majority of this is going to be infrastructure, whether it's water and wastewater, solid waste, airports, or the GO bond projects with drainage and traffic, those types of projects. And in the next slide, we'll look at types of projects. But public services makes up the largest portion of that. The public safety projects, there are some facility projects and fleet projects included there. The general government has our information technology and general fleet replacement, some facility work there. Culture and recreation would be projects that are funded for the zoo, for the hotel motel tax, for improvements at the fairgrounds, for parks and recreation. And then the OC MAPS projects makes up about 12.5%. Looking at the projects by facility type, or by type, facilities make up 32.8%, and the largest portion of that is from the MAPS for Kids. Also, airports is a large portion of the facilities projects. The streets make up 15% of the projects, and that's one that's been a priority for the council as well as for the citizens as we've had the citizen survey. Utilities is 27%, and the community enhancements at 14%. You know, one of the things that we see in a lot of our projects right now is with computer equipment, that being able to fund some of our computer equipment and technology that has been approved in the past with special taxes, that's going to be a challenge for us going into the next several years. And as a large portion of our unfunded projects is some of our technology for communications, for the radio system, for the Wi-Fi system, that we're going to have to be identifying funding sources for that. So that's a summary of the projects, just an overview. We are now going to have some of the department directors come and present their projects. And as I said before, if you have questions about specific projects, as you have an opportunity to look through the document, let us know and we'll get responses back to you on that. And I think Chief Bryant is up next.
Morning, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. City Manager. Pleasure to be here with you this morning and visit with you a little bit about the Fire Department's 5-year capital improvement plan. We'll start by a review of the funding per year and over the next 5 years, starting with 10-11, ending in fiscal year 14-15. You can see the amounts there by year, with the total being a little over $32 million. This is a breakdown of the projects by funding source. As Craig mentioned earlier, the majority of ours is in the unfunded, and I can tell you right now that this represents vehicle replacement for the most part. The other large category that you see up there, the 2007 bond issue, we have some projects that will be coming up in the next few years funded from that. 2000 bond issue, we're about to basically close those out with the completion of Fire Station 6 in Bricktown. And then another major category is the City and Schools Use Tax Fund that we've also used for some facilities projects. Summary of projects by type. You see how they break down there as far as new construction or buildings, as far as new building renovations that we currently have ongoing right now, one major project in particular. Equipment, not a lot there, but again, vehicles making up the majority of the projects by type. And then we have some unlisted in there for some additional facilities projects. Total projects by type, again, as I've said, the vehicles making up the majority of those projects. And again, we have some construction projects coming up in the near future with the 2007 general obligation bond, and that is the other major category. This map here would indicate those facilities projects that are either currently ongoing or in the planning stages right now. I would say the Northeast Fire Station that you see there in the far northeast corner of the city, that project was completed. That station is up and running, and we opened it up last month. Also, the Bricktown Fire Station, that's currently under construction and going along fairly well. And the Station 7 reconstruction is also ongoing and I think progressing along pretty much on schedule. The remaining there are the 2007 general obligation bond projects. The Richland Fire Station and the Southwest Fire Station that you see there, those we've already purchased the property for those projects, and on the Southwest Fire Station, probably over the next year or so, we should start the architectural and engineering phase of that. As I mentioned, the Northeast Fire Station was opened up last month. Many of you were there. And again, we completed that, and that was a 2000 general obligation bond project. This is a conceptual image here of the Bricktown Fire Station, and we, again, our target to complete that project is April of next year. A little bit about our vehicle fleet replacement and what we estimate our cost to be over the next 5 years. See that our current cost in 2010, a little less than $500,000 for a new pumper apparatus, and what we estimate based on our past history in purchasing would bring that a little over $500,000 by 2015. And this gives you an idea of the totals per year for our fleet replacement program over the 5 years of the capital improvement project, total of 83 vehicles at a cost of $16.5 million. And that completes my report to you this morning. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you might have. Appreciate the time.
Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Chief, actually, I do have one. Under the projects by funding source, there's approximately 45% that is unfunded. Is there any, do you have any ideas what might actually fund that?
Probably let the manager speak to that.
Right. That's what Craig mentioned early on. Was we went into it, and we only allocate the Maps for Kids use tax on a year-by-year basis, and so that will take up some of it, and then as that expires, it's anticipated, although not yet approved by council, that we would go into the Maps 3 use tax to fund part of that.
Thank you.
Good morning, Council, City Manager. The 5-year capital plan for the police department, as you can see, the total is almost $70 million, with the lion's share of that being covered in 3 years, 12, 13, and 15. Those projects, the summary of those projects, of that $70 million, the majority of it was from the police and courts complex, which is in the bond issue, and then also the mobile equipment, which would is being, as explained before, primarily with use tax. Projects by type. Again, on this pie chart, you'll see where the police courts complex is funded through the bond, makes up 54% of that, and the mobile equipment is 39%. The mobile equipment is primarily vehicles. Project by funding source, the GO bonds, the 58% for the complex building, Southwest Station. The unfunded, again, is primarily the vehicles and equipment through the use tax. Our project, the building headquarters building is about 78,000 square feet. We have about 240 employees. It was constructed, the portion you're looking at was constructed in '64. We had a major addition to that, both for police and courts, in 1980. The courts complex constructed in the 60s, a portion of it in the 60s, with a major addition again in the 80s, which the building is half of it's used by courts and half of it by police. Currently, they are occupying 45,000 square feet, and they have 62 employees in courts. The budget for the courts, again, is $37.8 million. The Architectural Design Group, ADG, was awarded the contract, and they are currently evaluating various options and associated costs of the projects at direction of the council, and it will be presented to council sometime this fall. Southwest Briefing Station, the proposed site is in the 6200 block of South Portland. It's actually on airport property. The building size will be estimated about 10,000 square feet at a cost of about $3 million. The Will Rogers Station, as you can see in the center that's currently being used, will not be used as a briefing station. Once the Southwest Briefing Station, our manpower districts will be redistributed when that facility is built. Cost of vehicles, currently the cost of a police cruiser is about $23,000. We're projecting in the next 5 years at about 5% rate per year, it'll go up to about $28,000. The projected police 5-year plan, you can see over the 5 years, the course of this, the plan includes replacing vehicles at about 100,000 miles. That usually takes about 5 years on a black and white vehicle. They usually put about 100,000 miles over a 5-year period. Some are different, some more, some less. You can see this year we had 145 vehicles. We actually ended up ordering considerably less based on the number of cars that we project to have 100,000 miles the time we replace them. The following years, our projections are what you see there for a total of about $20 million with 762 vehicles over the next 5 years. This includes all vehicles unmarked, marked, all the vehicles within our fleet. It does not include the helicopter. The helicopter, you can see the projected 5-year plan for the helicopter. Our plans had been to replace the helicopters in 2012-13 and also in 2014 and 15. We purchased our oldest helicopter. We purchased in 2001. We purchased the second one in, I think it was 2003. Originally talked about we used to replace them every 3 years. We've refurbished and overhauled the engines on those helicopters over the last 10 years for a significant savings to the city. But at some point we felt like in about a 10-year time period we should probably replace the helicopters. It will actually turn out to be about 12 and 13 years before those helicopters are replaced. Once we order those vehicles, actually what you see, we order the helicopter. It takes about a year to a year and a half to actually get the helicopter once we place that order. So that's it's a significant cost. You can see the maintenance costs are also significant on the helicopter unit. And that concludes the plan. Are there any questions I could answer for you?
I got one real quick. Back on the Southwest Briefing Station, Chief, yes. The location, proposed location for that, if you look at a map geographically, it doesn't look to disperse the stations very much at all. It's all, on the map it looks awful close to the southeast.
Yes.
Is it there because operationally that's a good place to put it, or because the land was cheap?
Well, the land being cheap's, that's a good reason too, but it's primarily being placed there because of the demographics. Easy access for officers. It's not too far out. It's close to the major demographics of where we have our problems, high density calls, those types of things. So the station is actually located to those neighborhoods where most of our units will actually be dispatched. So there's a variety of things, access to that. Also, at some point, we've actually talked about possibly co-locating our helicopter unit at that location, because at some point we're going to have to move, and the airport would be an ideal location for that. And we could actually combine the two facilities and eliminate some redundancy. Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. On behalf of the MAPS office, I'm pleased to present the OC MAPS program capital plan. A little bit outside of the 5-year plan, we're actually scheduled to complete MAPS for Kids in the next 3 years, and so this is actually for fiscal year 11 through fiscal year 13. And just as a reminder, there are three categories of the program: the construction, which is new and renovated facilities; technology, which is computer equipment and networking throughout; and then also the suburban schools program, serving our 23 suburban school districts. Looking at the next 3 years, you can see that our fiscal year 11, the year that we're currently in, is a peak year at $110 million. Moving on, you can see how we have a taper into fiscal year 13 for a total program of $245.6 million. Broken up by project type, the vast majority obviously is in construction at 205, technology at nearly 19, and suburban schools at 21. As we look at the pie chart and we look at the percentages, this would associate with that, with almost 84% of that being in construction. You can see a little over 8% in the suburban schools and a little under 8% in the technology. The funding source is single source. It is all from the OCMAP sales tax at 100%. This is a map of the Oklahoma City Public School District, which is the one that we're doing most of the work in, obviously. Approximately 70 schools being renovated, and this just shows the disbursement of those school sites across that district. As we look at the completion schedule, and we look at prior years and into the future, there are 16 schools that are scheduled for completion under this year. We've got our peak completion year to follow, and then our final year with 6 schools for a total of 70. And these are several of the projects that were just completed in fiscal year 10. Obviously, numerous schools in construction. As we talk about current construction, there's 24 school sites that have activity on them. There's actually 24 school sites remaining to go into construction that we'll enter into in this next year. This happens to be Heronville Elementary that was completed this past year. See the new entry on the left, and then the interiors, one of the interior shots on the right. This is Mark Twain Elementary School. Again, a new centralized entry in the upper left-hand side, and some of the newly renovated interiors on the lower right. This would be an elementary, and a lot of the use of the color that we're seeing throughout the school district. One of the renovation projects, one of our most significant, is the Oklahoma Centennial High School conversion. This was also completed last year. You can see again the new campus, the new drop-off drive that was created there, and this is one of the remodeled science laboratories. And then we talk about projects that are in construction, and Stan Wadey just happens to be one of these that we've recently finished. But in, again, the upper left, this is the new addition that includes the new entry and drop-off, and in the lower right, this is one of the construction progress photos of the new media center that's now complete. This was the former courtyard that is between the old building and then what we extended in as a part of the new construction. Another project that was under construction that's nearing its completion now this fall is Putnam Heights Elementary. Again, you can see some of the progress photos of the new addition. You can see the existing school in the background on the upper left. This is progress of one of the renovated classrooms in that existing facility. And then, of course, we've got Wilson Elementary recently completed as well. Upper left, this is the connecting corridor between that old school and the new. As many of you know and may have seen, and we'll hopefully soon have a groundbreaking, I should say a ribbon cutting out at the school. This is a rendition of Peter and the Wolf. They are the Wilson Wolves, and this was something that the architect brought to them as a part of that design. Again, this is the representation of the musical score for the chase scene. Each of the different colors represents one of the characters throughout that. But this wall is completed, and so I would invite you out to that school site. It's a really unique opportunity to advance art at the school level while still maintaining the standards that we've adopted with Maps for Kids. When we move to the technology projects, the desktop computer program, we are out actually this fall completing nearly 10,000 computer installations and completing the desktop computer deployment as a part of Maps for Kids. The network equipment and the classroom phone systems will be installed as those facilities are renovated. Many are just lacking those networks to support that equipment, and so it requires us to go in with physical construction to advance those, but this will be completed over the next 3 years. And in the suburban school program, this is a map of Oklahoma City, and just brought this back up as a reminder. There are 24 school districts serving Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City District is the largest, which is located at the center, but you'll see the 23 suburbans throughout. The program is scheduled to continue through fiscal year 2017, but with that, we are seeing an advance on some of the project applications. We're actually right around the $20 million mark and falling off of the $150 million program, and we expect completion of the suburban program probably about the same time frame as the actual overall Maps for Kids program. The projects are similar to those that are in the ID9 district. Again, it's construction, it's transportation, it's technology, and it's equipment throughout the district. You can see there's about $20.8 million there. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Harry, on the completed elementary schools, the ones that I'm familiar with have all, so I suppose all have addressed the drop-off. We're getting traffic as much as possible off the street with the new arrangements for drop-off provisions. Have you gotten any feedback from completed schools, principals or otherwise, as to the success of that modification in all these elementary schools?
I don't know if we have anything directly. I mean, obviously, as we improve those, I mean, we are actually seeing a direct impact with the reduced number of on-street parking. The other thing that we're being able to change is how the drop-offs occur. Once we enter a site and leave, we're able to separate, say, bus traffic from visitor drop-offs, where that may be one location now. Obviously, we can go out and physically see those changes and the improvements firsthand. But no, I don't have anything directly from the principals to report.
I just appreciated what I have seen, and I know in one area in particular where you've worked closely with the neighborhood to try to accommodate that in the final plan. So I haven't heard different than it's been working.
I do have one concern as it relates to drop-off, and that's North Highland, the east door, which butts right up to Broadway Extension, which is the service road. Cars come down that service road on an average basis of probably 45 to 50 miles an hour. And I don't understand why they have a circular drop-off on the far end of the school that butts right up to a main highway. And I mean, I'm saying the service road, but when cars come off of Broadway Extension onto that service road, it's almost equivalent to the speed that they're driving on Broadway Extension, and it just doesn't seem like that's a safe place for any entry or exit for children at all.
So the North Highland Elementary School is improved in two ways. It had an existing east side drop-off that was there prior to Maps for Kids coming on site. And the improvements that we provided on the east side was actually lengthening the length of that drop-off to provide for more queuing to assure that no cars would actually be on the access road. So they actually don't stop on the access road unless it queues to that point, but there's actually a circular drive to get them off of the access road before they actually make the child drops at the school. We've also enhanced the west side of the school with a new entry to improve drop-off in that location too, but the school had specifically requested through the community process that both sides be maintained. And so that was our charge, and we've moved forward with that. But again, enhancing the east side while then also enhancing the west side. And again, I've not heard any further complaint or dissatisfaction, at least from the school's point of view.
Well, I would like to know later when we could meet to find out what is the reason why they feel like it's necessary to have children right there on that main street.
And I'd be happy to do so. I'd be happy to follow up, yes.
Gary, do you have a question?
Yeah, on the, has more to do with the trust in the office, I guess, overall, but the high schools were part of their bond issue, not the MAPS money. But yet we're coordinating the construction of that under the MAPS trust, just like we've done all the other schools. And the swimming pools that were added in the last bond issue, are we taking that over too, or are we coordinating that too under the MAPS office?
So the gyms and the classrooms, as opposed to swimming pools?
I mean gymnasiums, I'm sorry.
Okay, yes. So the answer is yes. We are assisting in the management of the gymnasium and classroom projects, which is about $109 million of the $240 million program as a part of the MAPS function. It's separate from this being that it's bond funded, and so the proposal I gave you today was just the sales tax portion of the Maps for Kids program. But yes, we are assisting in their bond program as well.
We're basically doing contract administration for them. They're using the bond money to pay us for those services, and then we're continuing to provide those services to them. We're also through that process, though, getting a couple of program managers that are located in Eric's office that are school district employees to helpfully grow their expertise and technical abilities in that area.
Well, with all that being said, and also you talked about the suburban money that was still available to be drawn by the schools, is the MAPS Trust and the MAPS office going to just exist indefinitely, or have we looked at a date that will no longer be there?
There's a drop-dead date on the suburban schools for the use of that money, and so that will be finite and be closing out. We have extended the life of the office beyond the original expectations to assist in their additional 2007 bond issue that the school district did. So they will continue some years down the line, but the contracting is for a very specific task. And so we're going to build those gyms, we're going to build those additional classrooms, and the stadiums, I guess. There's some additional stadium money in there that we're going to work on. And then, it's anticipated, unless something else happens, that that's the only task that we're contracted to do at this point.
And when the original MAPS school projects are completed, and we're only dealing with those things that have been bond projects from the school's standpoint, those bond projects have the ability to pay for the MAPS office?
Yes, that's anticipation. The MAPS office is in a transition. We're kind of at high production right now, but within the next year or so, we will be dropping down, and then, of course, the same staff will be transitioning to MAPS 3 administration.
So if I might add, the original MAPS for Kids projects are scheduled to complete in about fiscal year 13. We are actually maintaining a program contingency still that's around $17 million, and the agreement that we entered into with the school district was funds available. We would use those reserve sales tax funds to fund the office through 2015, and that would be to assist them on the bond program.
Okay.
But then, again, we mentioned the suburban district program going until 2017, and then, of course, MAPS 3, which the office is also assisting on. That's the next 10 years. But starting at a point, we're starting to transition to where it's a 50-50 percentage at some point, and then it goes 70-30, and then eventually we'll transition completely out of MAPS for Kids, and we'll be ultimately into MAPS 3 after 2015 at 100%.
Pat? Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Eric, this is a question that has nothing to do with your presentation, but I'd like to either confirm or dispel a rumor that's circulating among some of my constituents that OC MAPS either rehabilitated or added to a school that was subsequently closed. Is there anything to that rumor?
We've had several schools that we have worked on that have since either closed or been transferred to other uses, yes.
So we essentially the rumor is correct then?
And I would say, depending on which school, there's been several that we've either maybe provided new roofing, we've provided new fire alarms, maybe we've done certain level of design services up to a point where a school has been taken either off of the MAPS for Kids list or different use, or in cases of, say, Dunbar Elementary, completely closed.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Good morning, Mayor and Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm pleased this morning to submit to you our proposed CIP for the next 5 years. I'll start with our capital amounts for each year. I'd like to tell you how pleased I am to be able to tell you that we have a great deal of funding for the park system in Oklahoma City, because if I were here some 20 years or so ago, I would be telling you about all the needs that we have that are all unfunded. So it's a wonderful thing to be able to come before you today and tell you that we have a great deal of funding to continue improving the park system. You'll see that the fiscal year's totals for those 5 years is $77 million, a sizable amount to be able to improve the park system. General outdoor park improvements are at $52 million. Facility improvements in the parks, buildings and the like, are $8.1 million. Paving, walks, paths, and trails are at $16.9 million of that $77 million. Projects by type, the pie chart here shows you that about 74% of the funding that we have in that $74 million makes general outdoor facility improvements, park improvements, that is. Facility improvements are about 8%, and paving, walks, and paths are about 18% of that $77 million. Our funding by source is essentially dominated by bond issue amounts. Almost 80% of our funding comes from bond issues. The 2000 and the 2007 bond issue funds most of this, and we're very pleased about that, that the citizens continue to vote bond issues to help us fund the park system improvements. Park improvements, the park improvement section at $52 million includes a great deal of playground improvement, ADA improvements that are very important to us to be able to bring those projects that we have in the park system to full accessibility. Athletic field improvements, we have gotten very much behind in our athletic fields, and we'll be able to continue improving those. Basketball improvements are very important. And you see depicted, of course, the major project that we have from bond issues to totally renovate the Mirror Botanical Gardens, Crystal Bridge, along with, of course, the TIF monies that are not part of my CIP project list, but that's a very important project that we're doing from our bond issue, redoing the Crystal Bridge. We have a great deal of major projects that will happen in the next 5 years in Oklahoma City in our parks. We'll be, within the next 5 years, completing the renovation of the Ed Lycan Conservatory, Tropical Conservatory at Will Rogers. We'll be building additional trail systems. We'll be renovating, or shall I say redesigning, both Woodson and Wiley Post parks. We will be continuing to improve the Softball Hall of Fame, Bicentennial Park, Kerr Park, a major renovation, redesign of Memorial Park, the Myriad Gardens I've already mentioned, and continuation of our playground improvements throughout the community that have been so successful and so well received. We have, $8.1 million for facility improvements, that is the buildings and such, in the park system. Two of those examples would be improvements at recreation centers and picnic pavilions, as you see depicted there. We also have some money in our bond issue, our CIP budget, to continue to keep the pools that we have open in good shape. Paving, walks, paths, and trails. We continue to have demands for trails. We have funds, $16.9 million, to continue building trails, maintain parking lots and trails. Some of our parking lots and trails have been on the ground for quite a few years now and certainly need work, and we're very pleased that we have the funds to complete that work. The next 5 years, you're going to see great changes in the park system, equally as great as those you've seen over the past 10 years, actually. So we're very excited to continue to see improvements made in the park system. We will not rest until our park system is the best in the country, and we think we're on track for that. I'd try to answer your questions that you may have. Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor and Council, Mr. City Manager, I'm pleased to be here this morning to present the Public Works Department's portion of the 5-year CIP. The first slide we have gives you our capital plan by fiscal year. You see the first 2 years are very heavy, $205 million and $108 million respectively. Those values are due in large part to the sports facilities sales tax and Project 180 improvements. The remaining 3 years, 2013, 14, and 15, are pretty typical of the bond program over the last 4 or 5 years. Projects by, our summary of projects by type. The streets obviously is the lion's share at about 67% of that total of $539 million. The facilities is also a large part, and again, heavily influenced by the sports facility sales tax improvements. This next slide sort of combines the first two and gives you an idea of those 5 years by project type. And you can see, again, streets is heavily weighted in all of the 5 years, with other types of projects with lesser amounts. And the facilities, again, are heavily weighted in that first year due to the sports facilities sales tax. This gives you an idea of the delivery of the projects total over the 5 years and gives you an idea of what the annual average is, and it's just under $108 million per year. I think it's important not only to look forward to the next 5, but to look back over the last 5 years and see the $580 million that's been awarded in those past 5 years. And again, streets has the lion's share at about 45%. Bridges, traffic, drainage, and parks, some lesser amounts. There's a large area that we've got labeled as other. And that category is 32% of the total and includes projects on city buildings, the Ford Center, the Cox Center, projects at the fairgrounds, the canal, the zoo, and the river, among some others. This pie chart indicates our work by status, tells you kind of what's going on with the projects that we intend to deliver over the next 5 years. As you can see that over 70% is either in construction or in design. This next chart, it gives you a different depiction of the work by funding source. Even with the added funding of the sports facility sales tax in Project 180, the GEO bond is still our major source at 69%. And this chart shows you, again, a different depiction of our plan by project type. And again, streets is 67% of the total, with 22% being for facilities, drainage, traffic, and bridges, lesser amounts. These next slides give you an indication of some projects that we've completed and some that are under construction and are planned. This is a recently completed street widening project on Western Avenue from 150th to 164th. This is a recently completed bridge replacement project. This is the one on the left, obviously, is the before shot, and the one on the right is the completed project. This is a drainage project that was completed in the last year in the Lightning Creek Basin. The Northwest Library, located near 122nd and MacArthur, is under construction. This is an artist rendering of what that would look like during the daytime, and then again during the nighttime. The next shot is an architect's rendering of the Southwest Library that's under construction near 134th and South Penn. And these have to do with Project 180. The one in the upper right is a shot of part of the Myriad Gardens that's under construction right now, and the one in the lower left is what one of our streetscape projects may look like, and obviously those are well under construction now. This is a rendering of the Great Lawn in the Myriad Gardens looking back to the northeast, and you can see the band shell over on the right. And that completes our presentation. I'll be happy to respond to questions. Thank you.
Good morning, Vice Mayor and Council. I'm pleased to present the 5-year water and wastewater program. The water CIP includes $272 million worth of improvements over the next 5 years. It includes neighborhood replacements, transmission mains, water storage facilities, treatment plants, and raw water supply systems. Looking at the map, the red lines are transmission mains that we'll be constructing in the 5-year program. The dots and squares are neighborhood rehabilitation projects and treatment plant and pump station improvements. Councilman Mars asked earlier about water pressure problems, particularly in the north. If you look at Lake Hefner, the blue spot farthest north, the dot in the middle is the Hefner Water Treatment Plant, where the Water Utilities Trust will today consider awarding a contract for the first piece of the transmission main going west, coming from the Hefner Treatment Plant around the northwest side of the lake down to Britton Road. It's the first piece of that. As you can see, another 4 miles of pipe are needed to get the water to our pump station, where it will do us the most good in helping us get a lot more water northwest. But this is a very big improvement that just those 3.5, 4 miles of pipe will also help us. We're very excited about it. More than half of the water program is actually spent on treatment plants this year. I'll describe that in just a minute. One project we're really excited about is we're building a new ground storage tank for the system. It's the first one in at least 10 years. It'll be located generally at the southeast corner of Will Rogers World Airport. building a booster station that will help us get additional water volume and pressure to southwest Oklahoma City. In addition, much of the Hefner Water Treatment Plant will be changed as we upgrade the plant by 25 million gallons a day from 75 to 100 million gallons a day. Again, the 5-year water program totals $272 million. The wastewater capital improvements program funds improvements in each of the watersheds we serve. This slide shows the major infrastructure in each of the key watersheds in which the wastewater system operates on which the CIP will build. The sewer CIP totals $191.2 million over the 5 years. About $30 million will be spent on neighborhood improvements, and about 22% of the total program is treatment plant improvements. 39% of the wastewater CIP is sewer interceptors. Mike, if we could go to the next slide, please. Thanks. 39% of the wastewater CIP is sewer interceptor investments, increasing capacity and decreasing sewer overflows. And as you can see, those are throughout the system. Our largest lift station, the Witcher Pump Station, will have the mechanical guts of the thing reconstructed and rebuilt. The pump station was flooded in the 500-year storm in June, and it's also getting a new flood wall as a part of the project. And finally, each wastewater treatment plant will undergo some level of improvement, minor capacity changes, or improvements in individual processes that help us meet treatment plant discharge permits. The combined water and sewer program totals $463.2 million, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Marcia, last week when we went through the run-through on this, before we had you cut back your presentation, you had a slide in there showing the transmission improvements in northwestern Oklahoma City. Councilman Myers asked about that earlier today. So can you touch base a little bit about some of, not just northwest Oklahoma City, but also some of the overall water transmission improvements that's anticipated?
Yes, now, or I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. We have water pressure problems in the far south, just east of Rogers World Airport, in the northwest, particularly along Northwest Highway at the high ground between the North Canadian watershed and the Deer Creek watershed. We have already addressed pressure problems near Tinker Air Force Base and coming along the South I-35 corridor. But key thing is construction of about 9 miles of pipeline, first half of it awarding today, to perfect the problem. We think we will catch up, do better, but that we'll still have, as we complete the pipeline, things will get better, deteriorate slightly. We're looking at doing that over about the next 4 years. At that point, we'll have more water at the pump station on Morgan Road, which is a key factor in delivery. We've got to get more water to Morgan Road to help us increase that service area, improve pressure generally. We think we're keeping up. We did get behind. There's no question about it. We try to do capital improvements on a real time as you need it, and we've had problems out there.
Transmission line going down Britton Road, the proposed transmission line that's going to go down Britton Road, will that be a singular line going to the pump station that you're talking about, or will you be attaching onto that as you go along for the pressure to service areas as it goes by it? Does that make any sense?
Yes, the line gets attached into the system. It gets gridded into the system. And as you know, the water system ties itself together to help improve pressure and provide service from multiple directions. In the case of this pipeline, we had a grievous failure close to the Hefner Water Plant early this summer, in which we identified we don't have a backup line at that location. So we're really excited about getting this $8.3 million project bid and built so that we have a backup, and then we add the pipe together into the others.
But there will be incremental improvements for each mile, and each time we tie it in, there will be incremental improvements as we go forward.
Yes, every time you complete a tie-in, you help improve the flow into that area. And the reason I'm struggling is it is a complex. I see it as a network that does have to get gridded together. It helps. You may see a 5-pound increase in pressure before we get to the pump station, maybe a 10-pound increase as we go forward. The big change comes when we get to the pump station and can pump at a higher pressure out to the neighborhoods.
Real quick, Marcia, several years ago I sat down with you and looked at the extent of red water across the city, and you highlighted specific areas of concentration. And I commented a month or so ago, in the last year or two, I've gotten few little comments about red water concern. How close are we to addressing and remedying those pockets of red water that you had delineated several years ago?
Things are better, and it's a combination of main replacement. We're just about done with the main replacement programs that were targeted for red water. The red water program does, however, we pick up new calls from customers about red water. Our first response is to freshen the water by flushing the area. We're installing automated flushing devices where we can to make that less obtrusive for neighbors and also less expensive for us. We're cognizant, though, of the cost of flushing water into the storm sewer and what that has to do. So we look at those factoids when we look at whether to replace the mains in the neighborhood. Is also one of the things that we do. Again, done with the major neighborhood replacements, doing more targeted flushing, continuing to watch. The system is relatively stable. We get a few new red water, a street worth of red water calls, for example, but it's very much not the crisis that it was.
Any other questions? City Manager?
Yes. Closing out here, we had the introduction, obviously, this morning to Council. It will be introduced to the Planning Commission next week on October 28th. The Planning Commission adoption will be November 18th, and as I mentioned, we'll be giving it to a whole lot of other boards and commissions in that interim time for their review and input, and we'll bring it back for final City Council adoption is anticipated on November 23rd. But if you have any questions, comments, want to get into the program a little bit deeper, staff would be happy to meet with you at any time.
I have one just quick question. I mean, what is the significance of adopting this plan in summary? I mean, this is what we're going to do with the money over the next 5 years. So if you have a project that you would like to see done or concerns that you have about projects, this is the time to talk about them. Is that right?
You know, this is a process that's required under state laws to have a 5-year plan and have it adopted by the Planning Commission and such. Most of the decisions, well, they're all different. The Maps for Kids decisions were actually made primarily when the voters voted on Maps for Kids, and the program's been modified slightly, but those decisions were made at that point in time. Most of the street projects are GO bond projects, and so most of those were done at the time the voters voted on that in 2007. Now, there's some unfunded projects and some things, there's a little bit of flexibility on there, but most of those are named projects as we go forward. The trusts have more flexibility. The water trust is a little more dynamic as they go through their allocation.
Let me just give a couple of specific examples. This refers to the police rehabilitation. And if we adopt this plan, does that mean that, because I had reservations at the time and I have more now about whether it makes sense to rehabilitate the existing building than it would be to start from scratch and build a new one. But if we adopt this plan, have we taken a step toward doing that?
Not at all.
That's just one. I mean, I could give you half a dozen other examples.
Absolutely
like that.
not at all. Remember, we got specific council instruction at the time we awarded the architectural contract to look at different alternatives.
Okay. On that specific one, then. But my question is more general than that. I just brought you I just mentioned a specific one because that's one that came to my mind.
This is more of a high-level planning document than a specific implementation plan.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Council still have an opportunity to make some suggestions as it relates to some of the projects and especially in some of our wards that we have some concerns as it relates to these various departments.
Sure. This is really a high-level document as we're going forward on that, and we're happy to talk to you about any specific concerns you may have. What we're trying to point out is that we've got X amount of money that we're going to be putting in the streets over the next 5 years, and it's generally funded by GO bond projects. We talked today about police and fire vehicle maintenance. We talked about that we've got some unfunded. We've got part of it funded out of the MAPS for Kids Use Tax. We have additional MAPS for Kids Use Tax that we anticipate putting in there, and we've got some unfunded projects that maybe, hopefully, could be funded at some point with some MAPS 3 use tax. And those are the type of things we want to talk about. Where are we funding police replacement vehicles? Where are we funding fire replacement vehicles? Where are we getting the funds? Do we have huge gaps here? There's a lot of integrated programs we've got going for us. Water and sewer, we just adopted water rates that were increased a couple of weeks ago. Well, as a part of that was to provide for the capital plan that they've adopted that's included in this. And so we've already gone through a series of reviews of that to make sure that we've got the cash flows available for both cash and bond issuance funding for water and wastewater for the next 5 years, and that was a 5-year rate increase that accompanied that. So based upon the decisions that the water and wastewater utilities presented and were adopted by the Water Utilities Trust, then that piece is cut out and implemented into this 5-year capital plan. I'm not sure I totally answered your question, but yeah,
I'm just happy to be a part of this. What do you call it? This high-profile plan.
High-level planning document, I believe is the term I use.
I got some low-level issues that I would like to talk about to see if they fit in this high-level plan.
Finished? We're adjourned.